If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 1. After 3 days of contemplation, Shirou finally came to accept that he had crossed over into the city of Fuyaki. The city is divided into 2 districts, Miyama and Shinto, and is home to prominent families such as the Tosaka and Matou, as well as the church, particularly the Riad Temple and the Fuyaki Bridge, which are iconic symbols of the city. Despite the initial difficulty in accepting it, Shirou eventually came to realize that he had become one of the main characters in this world, the second-generation hero of justice known as Shirou Emiya. However, he soon noticed that the timeline of his transmigration seemed to be slightly off. As Shirou stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The child staring back at him was around 6 years old, dressed in a sweater featuring the cartoon character Doraemon. He had a head of reddish-brown hair and eyebrows that seemed to be constantly furrowed. Despite his young age, there was an air of maturity and age to him that was unsettling. September 7, 1993. That's before the Fourth Holy Grail War. Shirou exclaimed, clutching his head in frustration. In addition to the fact that the Fourth Holy Grail War had not yet occurred in Fuyaki City, there were several other indicators that something was amiss. Most notably, this body or the little boy who would later be renamed Shirou Emiya was currently called Fujimaru Shirou, and both of his parents were still alive. This meant that Shirou might experience a series of tragic events during the Fourth Holy Grail War. For example, he might wake up one night to find a killer ghost lurking in his house, or he might get caught up in attacks by ancient heroes while walking home from school. The most critical issue was that Shirou's house was located near the Fuyaki Grand Theatre, the site of the final stage of the Fourth Holy Grail War and the place where the Holy Grail's black mud would descend. The fire caused by the black mud would turn the area into a sea of flames, killing everyone in its path. In the original history, Shirou Emiya was the only survivor of the fire, but now that he had crossed over, he had no way of knowing if he would be able to survive. No. Fuyaki City is too dangerous. It's better to hurry up and convince my parents to move. Shirou thought frantically. He made up his mind to persuade his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Fujimaru, to move out of Fuyaki City. However, his efforts were in vain. Shirou, you're not allowed to be stubborn anymore. Do you know how much effort your dad has put into getting this house? And moving? You're not allowed to say such stubborn words anymore, Mr. Fujimaru scolded him sternly. The economic downturn in 1993, coupled with the real estate bubble and the international financial crisis in 1992, made it difficult for many people to move. Fortunately, Mr. Fujimaru's job was relatively stable, so the possibility of moving was out of the question. Who knows if they would be able to find a job in the next city after quitting and moving? Shirou couldn't directly tell his parents that he was a transmigrator and that a magician's war was about to break out in Fuyaki City, leading to a fire that would kill them all. Even if they believed him, they would probably send him to the church to have the evil spirit exorcised from his body. Shirou had no choice but to accept the situation and hope for the best. Since the most effective way of moving had been vetoed, Shirou began to think about survival strategies for the Fourth Holy Grail War. He formulated the following survival guidelines: absolutely do not approach famous facilities such as the pier, Fuyaki Bridge, and International Hotel. Absolutely do not contact anyone related to the Holy Grail War. Go home after school. Don't go out after dark, and close the door when entering and exiting the house. Walk on the main road and never walk down the alley. By following these guidelines, Shirou hoped to minimize the chances of encountering dangerous situations during the Holy Grail War. It would not be easy, but he was determined to do whatever it took to survive. Article 19, absolutely do not stick your nose into other people's business, prioritize your own survival above all else. Article 20, pay attention to the movements of the Grand Theatre, and if anything unusual happens, quickly gather people and run away. Having written down these 20 survival guidelines, Shirou carefully read through them and couldn't help but praise their effectiveness. As long as he could survive and wait until he grew up, he could move to another city and use his knowledge of the future to create a better life for himself. Even if he couldn't become the world's richest person like the protagonists in urban web novels, at least he could make his life in this world richer than his previous one. He wouldn't have to rely on being punctual to get by like he did in his previous life as a third-rate web novelist. Just as Shirou was feeling proud of his plans and looking forward to his bright future, the arrival of one person caused his plans to come crashing down. On September 15, 1993, at 5:32 p.m., Mrs. Fujimaru returned home from grocery shopping, carrying a basket full of vegetables and meat, as well as a small girl covered in dust who was slightly smaller than Shirou. As soon as they entered the house and before Mrs. Fujimaru could even put down the basket of groceries, she confidently announced, "Shirou, this is Sakura. She will be your sister from now on." The little girl, dressed in a red dress, had short black hair and bright green eyes akin to emeralds. She nervously introduced herself, hello, big brother." Shirou had a blank expression on his face. Although she looked a little different from the girl in his memories, if he changed the color of her hair and eyes to purple, there was no denying that she bore a striking resemblance to the girl he knew as either Matou Sakura or Tosaka Sakura. But shouldn't Sakura have been outside his social circle at this point in time? How did she end up getting brought home by his own mother so suddenly? "Shirou, I'm telling you, Sakura will be your sister from now on, and you are not allowed to bully her." "Got it?" Mrs. Fujimaru said sternly. "Got it," Shirou nodded in response. It was clear that Mrs. Fujimaru wanted to adopt Sakura, but unfortunately, the family's decision was not up to her alone. Especially in this era of economic crisis, would Mr. Fujimaru, as the head of the household, accept the burden of an additional family member? What? Sakura was abandoned by her parents? And you found her in a garbage dump? How could any parent do that to their own child? No matter what the reason, it's unforgivable to abandon your own flesh and blood. All right, I agree. From now on, I'll treat Sakura as if she were my own daughter." Mr. Fujimaru exclaimed, his indignation palpable. His decision to adopt Sakura caused Shirou's mouth to twitch slightly. However, having accepted the memories of this body, Shirou also knew why Mr. and Mrs. Fujimaru was so kind-hearted. This may have been related to their own experiences as abandoned infants in the post-war era of the 1960s. They had been like dependent siblings before eventually getting married and having Shirou on April 15, 1987. Upon realizing that both of his parents had come to accept Sakura as their daughter, Shirou became overwhelmed with emotion. He tore up his plan sheet in frustration and tossed it into the trash. Chapter 2. Big brother, wake up, a soft voice called to him, and he felt a pair of small hands gently pushing him. Shirou muttered in his sleep, turned over, and instinctively reached out. There was now a warm and soft presence in his arms, reminding him of the pillows in his bed before he crossed over. But this presence felt a bit strange. And it was also warm and soft, with a faint voice in his ear, "Bro. Brother." Gently, Shirou opened his eyes and saw a shy face. His confused spirit instantly woke up and he sat up straight. "Sakura, I'm sorry, I squeezed you again," Shirou apologized with a guilty expression. "It's okay," Sakura sat up again, shaking her head and speaking softly. Shirou scratched his head, a little embarrassed. He used to have a habit of sleeping with pillows and always liked to hug something, so he just acted instinctively. Actually, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Shirou's house had 2 floors, with the first floor comprising the entrance and living room, while the second floor consisted of 3 rooms, one for Mr. and Mrs. Fujimaru, one for Shirou, and the last one was a storage room. As Mr. and Mrs. Fujimaru had welcomed Sakura into their home, but her room had yet to be tidied up, she had been staying with Shirou and sleeping in his room. Fortunately, Shirou was still a kid, otherwise, his parents, who had just taken in a daughter, would have likely chased him out of his room and insisted he slept in the living room. After all, it was deemed inappropriate for males and females to sleep near each other. The problem was that Shirou's physique was still that of a child, yet his mind was that of a normal teenager in puberty. Fortunately, his physical maturation was not yet complete, and his hormones were not yet in full swing. Nonetheless, these days, Shirou still subconsciously regarded Sakura as a pillow in his dreams. "Brother, don't sleep. Aunt Jo called us for dinner," Sakura climbed off the bed and said to Shirou with a serious face. Shirou's biological mother's name is Cho, Fujimaru Cho to be exact, and his biological father is named Fujimaru Narita. Both of them were abandoned children from the 1960s who, in an act of retribution against their respective parents, renounced their inherited surnames and created a new one. It is rumored that they first met in an area abundant with gourd vines, which inspired them to adopt the surname Fujimaru. Sakura had been with the Fujimaru family for 3 days, and by all accounts, she should be addressing Fujimaru Cho as mother. However, she was still unable to muster the courage to say it, instead addressing her as aunt and Fujimaru Narita as uncle. As the Fujimaru couple had experienced abandonment themselves, they could empathize with Sakura's emotions and chose not to impose the change of address upon her. In fact, their treatment towards Sakura was even more amiable than their attitude towards Shirou. This is simply ridiculous. Sakura and Shirou went downstairs and arrived in the living room, where his mother, Fujimaru-cho, had already made breakfast, with sandwiches and milk. At this time, people did not have the concept of nutrition and health, and breakfast and dinner were casually made as long as there was no risk of food poisoning. More practically, all 3 meals were instant noodles, which were economical and saved time, especially for those who had already joined the ranks of the unemployed. Fortunately, Mr. Fujimaru Narita, the mainstay of the Fujimaru family's economy, worked very hard because of his experience as an abandoned child and was highly valued by his boss, so the Fujimaru family's economic source was relatively stable. Mr. Fujimaru had already gone to work early, so at the moment only Shirou, Sakura and Mrs. Fujimaru-cho were eating at the dining table. At the dining table, Mrs. Fujimaru was as warm as ever towards Sakura, asking her questions and making her feel a little awkward with her enthusiasm. "Shirou, hurry up and eat. Don't be late for school, or I'll have to beat your butt open," Mrs. Fujimaru threatened sternly. Shirou was speechless. This is a typical example of a mother who has a daughter and forgets about her son. "Okay," Shirou replied weakly, dragging his voice out. Getting through compulsory education in the previous life was not easy, but now, with a new account, it's time to go back to school again. Fortunately, the difficulty of the course in Japan is not as scary as in China, and the physical education teacher does not get sick frequently. Unfortunately, Japanese primary school students inherited the excellent tradition of being chiyunibiu and have no interest in communication at all. Recently, the rerun of Dragon Ball Z on the TV station has rekindled the chiyunibiu spirit of these primary school students, and it is embarrassing to see them playing the poses of combining in broad daylight. "Sakura, Aunt Cho will take Shirou to school first. You stay at home and don't wander around." Fujimaru-cho took Shirou to the door and entrusted Sakura, who was at home. "Okay, Aunt Cho," Sakura nodded. What a reassuring, well-behaved child, unlike some big brats who still need their mothers to take them to school. Shirou expressionlessly, "Actually, you don't have to send me." "Shut up, no talking back to me." Fujimaru-cho patted Shirou's head and then showed a smile to Sakura before closing the door. Recently, there have been several student disappearances in Fuyuki City, a total of 7. This is enough to alarm any mother, and Shirou, who is well known for his involvement in the Holy Grail War, knows that these disappearances are the work of serial killer Ryu Unosuke Ryu, who has come to Fuyuki City and is treating it as his hunting ground. Mrs. Fujimaru, indignant, asks Shirou what kind of scum Sakura's parents are to abandon such a well-behaved little girl. Mrs. Fujimaru has grown to really like Sakura, who is well-behaved, sensible, cute and obedient, and almost fulfills all of Mrs. Fujimaru's idealized expectations of a daughter. However, Shirou has no expression on his face, probably because Mrs. Fujimaru is projecting her own experience of being abandoned in her youth onto the situation. Shirou doesn't believe for a second that Sakura was abandoned by the Tosaka family. Sakura's black hair and green eyes, although sometimes sad, still retain the purity and liveliness of a child. This means that Sakura has not yet been passed on by the Tosaka family to the Matou family and has not undergone modification by the worm. Sakura has been cautious about the outside world since coming to the Fujimaru household but also shows a strong desire to go outside, leading Shirou to believe that she has run away from home and is experiencing conflicting feelings about wanting to return. The Fujimaru family, however, does not know this background information and believes that Sakura's behavior is due to being abandoned by her parents and longing for them, probably because they are projecting their own experiences onto the situation. Accepting a runaway like Sakura is not a big problem, but the problem is what will happen when the Tosaka and Matou families come looking for her. Both families are Magus families, with one led by an old pervert who has been alive for hundreds of years, while the Fujimaru family is just a normal family. Even Shirou, who will eventually awaken and become an ally of justice, is currently just an ordinary brat who has not yet awakened, and it is certain that they will not be able to block the Magus families from finding Sakura. Forget it, we can think about that later. After all, we're just kindly accepting Sakura into our home, it's not like they would kill us all, right? Shirou thought, pushing these worries to the back of his mind. It's gradually time for school. Chapter 3. Fuyuki City is a small coastal city with 2 districts, the Old District, Miyama Town in the mountains, and the newly constructed district of Shinto, which experienced rapid economic development. As the city is small, there are only 2 primary schools, Hachigata in Miyama Town and Tsukamagami in Shinto. Shirou attends Tsukamagami Primary School because his house is in Shinto. At this moment, many students are saying goodbye to their parents at the school gate, including Mrs. Fujimaru, who takes Shirou to the gate and says seriously, "Don't wander off after school. Wait for me to pick you up, understand?" There are regular parents sending their children to school, as well as some who are worried because of the recent cases of missing children. "I know." Shirou nods, understanding the stakes of Ryu Unosuke hunting children. He is a time traveler who knows about the future, and his wish is to become a wealthy and powerful individual, so he would not allow himself to fall here. As he walks towards the campus, children in groups of 3 to 5 share their happiness on the way. Shirou does not encounter anyone he knows, and walks towards the school building with his backpack. Suddenly, he feels like someone is spying on him, but when he looks around, he doesn't see anyone looking at him. An illusion. He wonders. Could it be that he is too nervous about the upcoming Fourth Holy Grail War, causing this illusion? Scratching his face, Shirou ultimately can only come to this conclusion. Shirou is just an ordinary primary school student now, without the awakening of origins, and not a participant in the Holy Grail War. Who would need to spy on him, and for what reason? Thinking this, Shirou walks into the teaching building with peace of mind. However, he does not know that on a tower overlooking the entire primary school, a young man in golden armor has a slightly interested smile on his face. An interesting soul, the man thinks. Shirou's soul is more complex and nauseating than that of adults, like a mottled fire burning with cow dung, garbage, plastic, weeds, and waste. However, in this nauseating mottled fire that exudes a bad smell, there is also a small fire that exudes a fragrant new fire. The Golden King is sensitive and has noticed this small fire, and wonders whether to let the nauseating fire of evil swallow it up, let it become a complete mixed breed, or let the new fire ignite and break away from ignorance. The Golden King gradually fades away and finally disappears without a trace. The final math class ends, and it's time for lunch. Tsukamagami Primary School does not have a cafeteria, so students must bring bento boxes or buy food at the small shop. Mrs. Fujimaru made a bento for Shirou but also included a cup of kelp tea, which Shirou dislikes. He shakes his head and goes to the school gate grocery store to buy a soft drink instead. As Shirou burps and heads towards school, he can't shake the feeling that he is being watched. The icy malice emanating from his unseen observer only adds to his unease. Suddenly, a shadow darts across his field of vision and a loud bang echoes through the air. When Shirou comes to, he finds himself facing a stranger, unsure of where he is or how he got there. A distant voice is crying out, but he can't seem to focus on it, his head still foggy from whatever happened. The man's chaotic words suddenly stir Shirou's spirit, and he struggles to move his body and bites his tongue, causing intense pain that wakes him up. He is in a room with closed doors and windows, and the man has a girl tied up with a thick rope, crying. There is a bloody smell emanating from the damp ground and an unknown liquid flowing from a nearby adult corpse, telling a more terrifying story. The bloody scene stimulates the brain, causing Shirou to breathe slightly hurriedly and his head to become chaotic. Calm down. Calm down. Shirou tries to calm down, but the bloody scene stimulates his brain, causing adrenaline to constantly secrete and his head to heat up. He sees a man with orange short hair and a refreshing face, but he is using blood to draw an unknown magic circle on the ground. Shirou realizes that this is Ryu Unosuke, the serial killer. His eyes lock onto Ryu Unosuke as the madman picks up the girl, who is bound and crying, next to him. "Your tears are so lovely," Ryu Unosuke says, his smile growing wider as he relishes in the girl's cries of despair. Shirou's survival plan was crushed by Sakura and then he was caught by Ryu Unosuke. He feels so unlucky. He then noticed the brown-haired girl with short hair was wearing a uniform from Hachigata Elementary School, not a good sign. "Oh, my little angel, you're awake too," Ryu Unosuke exclaimed as he grabbed the girl and threw her into the center of the magic circle. He then turned to Shirou and laughed maniacally, throwing him into the circle as well. "With this, the sacrifice to the demon will be enough," Ryu Unosuke said, his face contorting into a twisted smile. "Overflow, overflow. Did I just say this a moment ago? Oh, never mind." He began to recite the incantation, and cold sweat ran down Shirou's forehead. It was clear that Ryu Unosuke intended to play the game of summoning a demon and killing them both. He was a scumbag who took pleasure in killing, and he had even killed his own beloved sister in the past. He had found an ancient book that seemed to be a magic book at his home, and he had been following the summoning ritual in the book, collecting sacrifices and killing people to summon a demon. Although this had inadvertently triggered the summoning mechanism for the Holy Grail War and summoned a servant, he had participated in the war not because he wanted to, but because this kind of cult-like killing pattern brought him new joy in killing. If Ryu Unosuke, who had finished the incantation, was unable to summon a demon, he would personally kill Shirou and the girl. What to do? Shirou's fear of death was palpable as he sat, bound and helpless, in the dark room. As an ordinary elementary school student, he knew that he had nothing to offer in this dire situation, save for his knowledge of the Type Moon world and a sense of business acumen. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he frantically tried to think of a way out, but all he could do was wait and hope that someone, the Jade Emperor, the Three Pure Ones, God, Jesus, or even the mysterious being who had sent him through time would come to his rescue. These purely mental beings were unreliable. The most reliable ones might be the police. But then, when he looked at the girl by his side, his heart grew cold. He realized that the police might be his only hope for survival. With Hachigata Elementary School being over 10 miles away from Tsukumagami Elementary School, the perpetrator, Ryu Unosuke, had committed crimes in 2 different locations, which would only further delay the police's response. Shirou couldn't shake the feeling that by the time the authorities arrived, it would be too late, and all they would find would be the bodies of 2 innocent children. Nobody is reliable, the only thing left is self-rescue. But how can we go about self-rescuing? No system, no awakening, no magic, no superpowers. He was just an ordinary elementary school student, with his hands and feet tied up with thick ropes. How was he going to self-rescue? As Ryu Unosuke recited the incantation and slowly walked over with a knife in hand, Shirou panicked. He didn't want to die. I don't want to die. As he lay trapped within the magic circle, Shirou barely registers the faint flickering light that dances around its perimeter. His fear of death and delirious fever leave him unable to focus on anything other than his own terror. Meanwhile, a warmth begins to spread through his right hand, accompanied by the appearance of a bright red mark. If he were in a more lucid state, he might have realized that something strange was happening to him. Chapter 4. A double-edged, red mark appeared on Shirou's right palm. In the same instant, the magic circle beneath him begins to radiate a faint, reddish light, and a powerful wind sweeps away the debris surrounding it, forcing Ryu Unosuke to take a few steps back in surprise. Wow! Cool! What is this? Is the Demon Lord coming? Ryu Unosuke's eyes sparkled with childlike fascination as he stared at the magic circle and the strong wind. The girl at the center of the formation, sensing the abnormal change, cried out in fear and instinctively moved closer to Shirou. However, Shirou, in his poor state, was unaware of this. In the land of Fuiuki City, a magic ceremony known as the Holy Grail War is about to take place. The Holy Grail is a wish-granting machine, and in addition to the 3 families that originally established the ceremony system and the clock tower that accepted it, other participants must have strong wishes to be selected by the Holy Grail. Shirou's fierce desire for survival had previously been recognized by the Holy Grail, granting him the participants' proof of the seals, the double-edged, red sword-like mark on his right palm. Ryu Unosuke learned from magical books that the ceremony to summon a servant involves using a spell drawn with fresh blood and chanted aloud. Now, the participants, the magic circle, and the spell are all in place, and the Holy Grail War ceremony has begun. However, there is a problem with this ceremony. The Holy Grail War is a conflict for magicians, so naturally, the participants are all magicians. After all, how could they possibly summon and control a servant without the necessary basic magic power? But Shirou is just an ordinary elementary school student, even though his body possesses 27 magic circuits. He is still just a 6-year-old elementary school student who hasn't yet awakened his magical potential. Yet, he has still managed to establish a connection with the Holy Grail. As a result, the powerful magic of the Holy Grail ceremony has directly overwhelmed his magic circuits and forced his body's hidden magic circuits to start connecting with the summoned servant. It hurts, it hurts. Shirou muttered, his nerves feeling like they were on fire, the pain indescribable. In addition, the magic circuits being forced to open and connect with the summoned servant caused a huge influx of magic power at the initial contact, making Shirou see an illusion. A sword. No matter where he looked, all he saw was swords. divine swords, holy swords, demon swords, cursed swords, blessed swords, legendary swords. All these swords are stranded in a dark and seemingly hopeless world, like a sword graveyard. Tisk. You actually summoned me, a male voice, sounding rather unhappy and rude, spoke in Shirou's ear. The miracle known as the Holy Grail, if it is summoned by you, the command seals on your hand cannot fulfill my wish. Most importantly, if I have to take orders from you, I'd rather die, the summoned servant declared, shattering his spiritual foundation, Saint Graph, and returning to the outside of the timeline and world line. However, his remaining spirit foundation was not destroyed, but instead absorbed and integrated into Shirou due to the origin awakening Shirou underwent. Yes. The summoned servant is Shirou. Well, more accurately, it is the second-generation hero of justice who was not taken over by a stranger soul, survived the Fuiaki fire, lost both parents, and changed his name. Heroic spirit Emiya Shirou. Shirou's young body cannot bear the burden of the Saint Graph of a servant, which is difficult to bear even for those of the same source. His whole body feels hot like he was being roasted, and some marks similar to Emiya's are etched on his body. The surging power begins to rampage, and with a crack sound, the pure force tears apart the thick ropes wrapped around Shirou's body. What's going on? Where's the demon lord? What's wrong with you? How can a child possess such immense power? Ryu Unosuk exclaims in shock. Shirou's piercing stare seems to bore into Ryu Unosuk's soul, causing his heart to skip a beat under the intensity of the young boy's gaze. The surging energy coursing through Shirou's veins leaves his head spinning and his body begging for rest. But he knows he cannot succumb to fatigue, not while Ryu Unosuk remains a threat and the innocent girl at the center of the magic circle is at risk of losing her life. He fights off the fatigue, determined to protect both himself and the girl from harm. Despite the excruciating pain in his head, Shirou gritted his teeth and summoned the knowledge of the projection magic principle stored within his Saint Graph. With a swift flick of his hand, a shimmering sword materialized and shot through the air towards Ryu Unosuk, its cold momentum slicing through the space between them. However, Shirou's aim was thrown off by the throbbing pain in his head and the sword only narrowly missed its intended target, piercing Ryu Unosuk's chest instead. A fountain of fresh blood gushes forth, clouding the air with a red mist. Despite the excruciating injuries he has sustained, Ryu Unosuk remains eerily calm, showing no signs of agony or fear. It's almost as if he is immune to pain, a disturbing revelation considering his profession as a killer. But even without the ability to feel physical pain, Ryu Unosuk is not completely oblivious to danger. He seems to sense that something has gone awry and makes a desperate bid for escape. Shirou aches to pursue Ryu Unosuk and put an end to the madman's reign of terror, but the strain of merging his spiritual foundation with such overwhelming power has left his mind and body on the verge of collapse. Despite his best efforts to stay conscious, he eventually succumbs to the exhaustion and slips into a coma. Woo-woo. The girl sobs uncontrollably as her body is racked with fear. Soon, the police arrive. Shinto Police Station. We apologize for this unfortunate incident. It is a result of our police force's dereliction of duty. The child may experience strong emotions and will need the support and care of their parents. We don't want to hear apologies. What about the perpetrator? Have they been caught? I'm sorry, ma'am. We were unable to apprehend the suspect. But rest assured, we are doing everything in our power to track them down and bring them to justice, the police officer explains, trying to reassure the Fujimaru couple. When the couple returned home, Sakura was there waiting for them. She had a strong bond with Shirou. In the past few days, he had told her stories and had been very kind and gentle towards her, just like a sister. So now, seeing him unconscious, she was very worried. Mr. Fujimaru hesitated, not knowing how to answer. This kid collapsed after running a race and experiencing physical exhaustion, Mrs. Fujimaru smoothly covered up the truth. Sakura said nothing, watching Shirou's pain-filled face as he lay on the bed. She went to the bathroom and grabbed a cold towel, then climbed onto the bed to help wipe the sweat off Shirou's face. It hurts, it hurts. Shirou muttered in his sleep, his face contorted in pain. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. Sakura is here. Brother doesn't have to hurt. Be good, brother, Sakura gently touched Shirou's forehead. The Fujimaru couple watched this scene from outside the room and quietly closed the door. I really like this girl. She will make a great wife in the future, Mrs. Fujimaru said. Yes. I wonder which family she belongs to, and how could they be so heartless as to abandon her? Mr. Fujimaru asked. I don't know. What does it matter? Those trashy parents are not worth mentioning. In the future, she will be my daughter and I will dote on her, Mrs. Fujimaru said. Mr. Fujimaru nodded with a smile. Narita, do you think this incident will cause Shirou to suffer from psychological damage? Mrs. Fujimaru asked worriedly after a moment of silence. Sigh, don't say that. I'll ask the school for a long holiday. I'll talk to the president and see if I can take some time off to take him out and relax. I don't want to cause any psychological problems. Will the company allow you to take time off at a time like this? If they don't approve it, I'll quit. I can find another job, but I only have one child. I don't want Shirou to be like us, never experiencing the love of parents. Such a life is incomplete. Mr. Fujimaru said. Chapter 5. Shirou's eyebrows unconsciously tightened as he slowly opened his eyes. His consciousness had not fully returned yet, as if the pain in his brain from overuse was still present. He felt a moist breath on his face and a soft, warm presence next to him. Slightly turning his head, Shirou saw Sakura lying next to him on the pillow, sleeping peacefully. With each breath, the warm air gently exhaled onto his face, like a cat's claws scratching an itch. Shirou's throat was a little dry, so he slightly moved to try to get up and pour a glass of water. However, this slight movement woke the girl next to him, who let out a soft mumble. Brother, you're awake, the girl says, rubbing her sleepy eyes and speaking in a soft voice. Sorry, did I wake you? Shirou apologizes, his tired smile belying his still weak body. I was just trying to get some water and I guess I woke you up by accident. I'm sorry. Let me do it for you. No, it's okay. It's just a small thing. I can do it myself. Shirou smiles and tries to sit up, determined to take care of himself despite his weakness. But to Shirou's surprise, Sakura pushed him back and said seriously, brother is a patient. You should lie down. Saying that, she ran out of the room and went downstairs to get water. Shirou didn't know what to say. He could only sigh that having a sister is really nice, especially one who is so considerate. But reason told Shirou that this is only temporary. Sakura had run away from home and the Tosaka and Matou families will definitely find her. Shirou shook his head, not wanting to think about these complicated things. But even if he didn't want to think about them, these complicated things would come to him anyway. Slightly lifting his hand, Shirou looked at the red marks on his palm, or rather, the cursed magical creations called command seals. A bitter expression appeared on his face. He had wanted to avoid the Fourth Holy Grail War but ended up becoming a participant in it. And he even summoned the original owner who wanted to kill him. As a result, when the servant saw that it was his young self who did the summoning, he decisively committed suicide, ultimately causing part of him to merge with his spiritual core and become a subservient like Matou, as well as a part-time master. Isn't this pushing him to a dead end? As both a master and a servant, even if he wants to withdraw from the Fourth Holy Grail War, he can't. The only way to withdraw from the Holy Grail War is for either the servant to perish or the master to perish. And now he is both a servant and a master, how can he withdraw? Use his head to withdraw? Is the outcome going to be that he either scrapes by and wins or gets crushed to death? My luck, it's really not good. Why is it so bad? He wanted to avoid the Fourth Holy Grail War and the mysteries, but in the end, he has become tied to the Holy Grail War in a relationship where either he dies or the other person dies. How unlucky! It's like carrying water with a bamboo basket, tears coming before words can be spoken. What is this? Suddenly, Shirou was surprised by the sight in front of him. In front of him was a frame, like the system frame described in novels. No. It should not be called a system frame, but rather a magic brought by the Holy Grail, which analyzed the body's condition and formed data that could be recognized by the brain. Fujimaru Shirou. Type, demi-servant. Class, caster. Strength, E. Endurance, E. Agility, E. Mana, C. Luck, E. Noble Phantasm, Unlimited Blade Works, EA++. Class Skills. Territory Creation E. As a non-magus, you lack understanding of a magical workshop and can only barely create one with limited protective functions using your class-given skills. Item Construction E. As a non-magus, you have no knowledge of item construction and can only barely create a few magical items with limited abilities through your class-granted skills. Inherent skills. Eagle Eye C, from a high vantage point, you have the ability to survey an entire town and detect enemies. Magecraft C, capable of using orthodox thaumaturgy, such as reinforcement and projection. When projecting sword-type weapons, it will rise to A+. Mind's Eye, True, B, capable of calm analysis of battle conditions even when in danger and deduce an appropriate course of action after considering all possibilities to escape from a predicament. Without a doubt, this is the ability template brought by the fusion with heroic spirit Emiya's Saint Graph. But isn't this attribute value too low? Shirou's mouth twitched at the sight of a row of E's. How can he survive in the Holy Grail War with these attributes? This is too difficult. This is a dead end. The danger to his life prompts Shirou to get off the bed and pick up a towel to wipe his right hand, even though he knows it is a futile effort. He still hopes to be able to wipe off this curse, as it is too scary to have. He's afraid that halfway through, a servant will jump out of the bushes and shout Demasha while wielding a big sword and gank him. Big brother, what are you doing? Sakura picked up a cup of water and walked in, looking at Shirou with a confused expression. Shirou subconsciously covered his right hand and turned to the girl, muttering, "It's nothing." She placed a glass of water in front of him and said, "Here you go." Shirou gratefully picked up the glass and drank it all in one go. "Big brother, you should lie down. Your body is still weak," Sakura said with a worried expression. "Yeah, I know." Shirou hid his right hand behind his back and lay back on the bed, pointing to the drawer of the desk with his left hand. "Sakura, there are 2 black gloves in that drawer. Can you help me get one? If he can't wipe off the curse, then he can only cover it up. Otherwise, if other participants find him, he will definitely be killed in various ways. How can a 6-year-old kid with a full row of E attributes fight with those mythic killers who have experienced life and death? How will he fight? With his head? Therefore, he can only reduce the chance of his curse being exposed, and it is best if no one finds out. He needs to run away from Fuyuki City as soon as possible. Who knows, there may be a chance of survival." "Big brother, why do you need to wear gloves in the room? And what is the red graffiti on the back of your right hand? It can't be washed off." And Ontacho was very angry before. Sakura passed the gloves to Shirou and reported at the same time. Shirou, who received the gloves, slowly lost his smile. "Sakura, have you seen the mark on the back of my right hand?" Shirou asked nervously. Sakura nodded, feeling somewhat strange about why Shirou's face was so tense. "Besides you and my mom, has anyone else seen the mark on the back of my hand?" Shirou's face was extremely tense, as this involves his life. "Yes." Sakura nodded without hesitation. "Who?" Shirou immediately asked, as this is a matter of life and death. Me, Ontacho, Uncle Narita, and your teacher, classmates, and aunts and uncles from the surrounding neighbors' houses." Sakura thought and said, "Oh, right. And a girl with brown hair, as well as her parents and relatives. A lot of people." Sakura tried to recall and answered Shirou's question to the best of her ability, but she did not notice that Shirou's face was getting paler and that a white ghost-like ball was almost coming out of his mouth. As soon as the thought of possessing the command spells entered his mind, Shirou imagines a group of mages with grotesque smiles knocking on his door and setting him up like a fool in every way imaginable. Oh my god, it's too much for him. Please, oh Lord, turn him back into a human. Chapter 6. At this point, Shirou had no choice but to confront the harsh truth that had been forced upon him. As a young boy, Shirou had been selected for a special purpose, but now the secret of the curse he bears has been revealed, and he knows that greedy magicians will stop at nothing to end his life. As for whether anyone will spare his life considering that he is still just a child, perhaps if he wasn't a demi-servant, an ally of justice like Emi Yakuritsugu might let him go. But now that he is a demi-servant, and both a master and a servant to boot, there's no doubt that no one will spare him. As for counterattacking, with an E-rank ability, combat experience relying solely on inherited Saint Graph, and a normal Chinese person's brain and thought process, how can he fight those old foxes and mythological level murderers? Should he just bash their heads in? At this point, Shirou thought about it, and the only way he could think of to survive was, "Mom, let's leave Fuyuki City." When Fujimaru-cho returned from grocery shopping, Shirou made this suggestion with a grave expression. Leaving Fuyaki City is the safest way to avoid the Fourth Holy Grail War and ensure their survival. As long as they remain in the city, their lives will always be in danger. The only option is to leave. Even leaving the city may not be enough, as there is a risk that the skilled magician hitman with access to modern weapons might come after them. It might be best to leave Japan entirely and go abroad, perhaps to China where the border controls are strict and an infamous international hitman magician would likely be placed under surveillance upon entry. But Fujimaru-cho objects, saying seriously, don't say such reckless things anymore. As abandoned children who have managed to build a home and a family in this city, they know how hard they have worked to get where they are and are not willing to give up their hard-won home so easily. The most pressing concern is that leaving Fuyaki City would mean giving up their jobs. In this difficult economic era, it is very challenging to find employment. Without a job, how would the family generate income? Would they have to rely on farming to make a living? This is a significant consideration that makes the decision to leave more difficult. I understand that you are feeling anxious and uncertain about the situation in Fuyaki City right now, but don't worry. Your father has already taken leave and we're going on a family vacation. Fujimaru-cho said, trying to reassure her child. A family vacation? Shirou asked. Yes, the four of us will go on a family vacation, Fujimaru-cho smiled, her fierce demeanor softening slightly. By saying the four of us, it was clear that she had already begun to view Sakura as a member of the family. Shirou realized that going on a vacation would be a viable solution as long as they can avoid the Fourth Holy Grail War. When the time comes, they can leave Fuyaki City and never return. While it may be a somewhat childish approach, survival is the most important thing. What's wrong with wanting to live? When will we leave? Shirou asked, understanding that the timing of their vacation is crucial for avoiding the Fourth Holy Grail War. Your father's leave has been approved, but he still needs to take care of some important business matters at the company. It should only take him a few weeks to finish everything up. Fujimaru-cho, unaware of Shirou's true motivations, assumed that he was excited about the trip and gave a proposed date. A few weeks? Shirou thought to himself. While he may not be a seasoned Fate fan, he still has a general knowledge of the series and is aware of the timeline. The Fourth Holy Grail War is said to have taken place in 1994, and the descriptions of the setting suggest that it took place in the winter. It is now September 1993, so there is at least a 2-month buffer before the war is expected to start, whether it begins at the beginning or the end of the year. Shirou let out a sigh of relief at the thought that he might be able to avoid the Fourth Holy Grail War, but when he caught a glimpse of Sakura from the corner of his eye, his resolve wavered once again. According to the Fate timeline, Sakura was passed on to the Matou family for modification a year before the Holy Grail War. And looking at her now, although she had a sad look in her eyes, she still had the purity and vivacity of a child and didn't look like she had gone through any modification at all. So it looks like the Holy Grail War occurred at the end of 1994? Whether it starts at the beginning or the end of the year, please God, do what is right, and don't do anything unexpected. For the next few days, Shirou stayed holed up at home, refusing to go out no matter the weather. He knew that the command seals had been seen by many people, which increased the chances of exposure. Going out now would be like inviting an attack. While there is a chance of encountering participants in the war, the chances are relatively low, and home is still a relatively safe place. Big brother, here you go, Sakura said as she returned Shirou's art textbook to him. Sakura has been staying with Shirou's family and has been mostly using his textbooks to learn new things. Shirou's family does not know if Sakura has received any previous education or where she may have studied before, and they are hesitant to bring up the topic of her wounds, so they have not asked. Sakura is also sensitive about this subject and has not mentioned it. However, the Fujimaras have decided to adopt Sakura and want to provide her with an education. Since classes have already begun, they have decided to allow Sakura to adjust at home for a period of time before enrolling her in school, given her current psychological state. This just goes to show that the most considerate people are always those who have experienced something themselves. Here, this is an art picture book. Have a look, Shirou said as he took an art picture book out of his bag and handed it to Sakura. In the time that they have spent together, he has noticed that Sakura really enjoys these art picture books and sometimes, when they are both at home with nothing to do, she will take out some paper and start drawing. Thank you, brother, Sakura said with a sweet smile. Shirou felt that he had been healed. This feeling of having a younger sister at home is really good. It's just that. When he thought about Sakura's family background and the difficulties that she would likely face in the future, Shirou's mood became a bit somber. He knew very well that their current relationship was temporary and that eventually, they would have to part ways. Sakura was a member of the Tosaka family and was destined to be retrieved by Tosaka Tokiomi and then passed on to the Matou family, where she would begin her own journey. Shirou had sympathy for Sakura's fate, but he was helpless. At the time, he was too busy with his own concerns to be able to focus on helping anyone else. Furthermore, even if he wanted to take care of her, he would not know where to find the power to do so. He was no longer a reader who sat in front of a computer or held a phone and watched fan fiction or novels, able to safely sit at a high-dimensional angle overlooking the world and criticize the actions of the characters. He was no longer qualified to say the protagonist is really rubbish anymore. He was just a passerby, but also an ordinary person living in a peaceful era. He had harbored the delusion of being a hero who could save the day, but in reality, he was an ordinary person protected by a society governed by law. What an ordinary person can do to be a hero and save the day, especially when faced with enemies like murderers from mythology, magicians who treat human life lightly, and old monsters who have lived for hundreds of years. However, it is strange that Sakura has been staying at home for almost 10 days and the Tosaka family has not come to the door yet. Given their resources, this is very unusual. It is possible that Tosaka Tokiomi is so focused on the Holy Grail War that he has neglected this matter. But that's okay too. If separation is the predetermined outcome, Shirou hopes that this time can be extended indefinitely. On the one hand, Shirou genuinely likes this well-behaved and sensible girl, but on the other hand, he does not want her to suffer such a terrible fate. However, it is time for them to part ways. Can he really stand by and watch as a girl suffers such a terrible misfortune and do nothing about it? Shirou does not know. He is an ordinary person, with a conscience, kindness, malice, concerns, and selflessness, but he is also a selfish person. He does not know how he will react at that moment and does not want to think about these complex things. He has entrusted the answer to time, and perhaps when the time comes, it will tell him what to do. But for now, Shirou has to face another serious challenge. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Are you going to come out or not? I'm not coming out. Have you seen my palm? If you don't want this palm to land on your butt, you'd better let go of the pillar and come out with me right now. I won't come out even if I die. As Mrs. Fujimaru watched the stubborn Shirou cling tightly to the pillar, a headache began to form. When she brought Shirou back from the police station, Mrs. Fujimaru noticed the marks on the back of his right hand. She was not a magician, so Mrs. Fujimaru was unaware of the existence of magic. Therefore, she had no knowledge of the Holy Grail War or the seals. To her, the marks on Shirou's hand seemed like a tattoo similar to those used by cults. This was because, when the police had found Shirou, they had also discovered a magic circle on the ground that seemed to have been drawn in blood, as if it were the result of some cult ceremony. As a mother, Mrs. Fujimaru doesn't want her son to have tattoos or anything that might make him seem like a delinquent. She had been hesitant to bring up the issue before because she was afraid that Shirou might still be struggling with negative emotions. However, after living with him for a few days and seeing that he didn't seem to be affected by any negative feelings, Mrs. Fujimaru decided that it was time to take Shirou to the tattoo shop and have the red tattoo removed. Shirou, of course, refused to go out, and he only wanted to stay at home and survive until his father's work was finished and then escape from Fuiaki City. Unfortunately, a child's wishes are often disregarded by their mother, even if the child's thoughts and actions seem mature. But because Shirou has the Saint Graph fusion, which makes him much stronger than an adult in terms of physical strength, it is only natural that Mrs. Fujimaru is unable to physically force Shirou to do as she wishes, as he is a servant with the physical strength attribute of E, even if it is at the lowest end of the scale. A normal person would not be able to overpower him. This makes Fujimaru-cho very depressed, and she can only threaten him loudly, "Are you going to come out or not?" To which Shirou stubbornly replies, "I won't come out even if I die." For the sake of his life, Shirou is also stubborn. Mrs. Fujimaru is feeling completely helpless in this situation. Despite her tough exterior, she has never hit a child, and at most will only scold them loudly. This may be due to her own early experiences. She doesn't know how to be a parent and doesn't have a model to follow in learning how to raise a child. While she wants to give Shirou as much love as possible, she doesn't know how to express it or how to effectively discipline him. If Shirou's mother from his past life were here, she might have slapped him by now. When a child doesn't listen, it is often because they have not received enough discipline, and a good scolding can help to set them straight. Fortunately, Shirou is an adult soul, and his previous personality was also quite good, so he has not strayed from the right path. Sakura encouraged Shirou, saying, "Brother, Sakura will go to the tattoo shop with you. So you must also gather your courage and try to go out." Like the Fujimaru couple, Sakura thought that Shirou was still afraid of the outside world due to his encounter with the serial killer and had shadows in his heart. However, the truth was that Shirou was actually a little afraid of the outside world because of the Fourth Holy Grail War. But tattoo shop? Right. How did he not think of that? The idea of going to a tattoo shop to cover up the curse occurred to Shirou, and he immediately stopped resisting and became very cooperative. This left Mrs. Fujimaru speechless, as she thought to herself, "It's really, with a little sister, forget the mother." Mrs. Fujimaru shook her head at the strange turn of events, but was happy that Shirou had become much more cooperative. Before they left, she made him put on gloves to hide the tattoo from view. As a mother, she didn't want anyone to see her child with a tattoo. Shirou himself wanted to hide the tattoo even more than Mrs. Fujimaru did, as it was a matter of life and death for him. A family of 3, consisting of a mother, a brother, and a sister, walked out of their house and headed towards the tattoo shop. Under normal circumstances, such a happy family would attract a lot of attention as they walked down the street. However, the current atmosphere is one of indifference, with people rushing about and minding their own business, as if the cold wind of Siberia was blowing through the streets. It is understandable that people are not paying attention to the family, as the current economic recession has created a sense of anxiety and fear that hangs over everyone like a sword of Damocles. Under such circumstances, people are likely to focus all their energy on their own problems and have little spare energy to pay attention to others. However, there is a pair of eyes that have been watching Shirou from the moment he walked out of the house. The new flame has disappeared. It has finally turned into a purebred hybrid. There is no disappointment or anger in the speaker's voice. The Golden King, standing on the tower and looking down at the earth below, has long been accustomed to these kinds of things. The soul of a child is as pure as snow, but as they go through life and are exposed to the mottled world around them, they may become contaminated with seeds of ignorance. This can cause the soul to become a disgusting hybrid. And hybrids, no matter how you teach them, won't be able to learn. No matter how you guide them, they will still fall into ignorance. It doesn't matter how much effort is wasted. Disappointment is an emotion that has long disappeared from the Golden King. Because the Golden King has given up hope. Without hope, where is the disappointment? Humph! With an arrogant laugh, the Golden King gradually disappeared. He saw through the true identity of the child named Shirou and was aware of the fact that he had fused with the Saint Graph. However, he did not take action. Mongrels are just mongrels. It's dirtying his hands to take the initiative and treat them seriously. But if a mongrel dared to spy on his treasure, then the punishment of the king will surely come. Shirou paused, scanning his surroundings. Is something the matter, big brother? Sakura noticed Shirou's hesitation and inquired. No, it's nothing, Shirou shook his head and resumed walking. Shirou felt a sense of confusion wash over him. A moment ago, he had distinctly felt as though he was being watched, but upon looking around, he saw no one. Additionally, the sensation of being watched hadn't carried any malicious intent and quickly dissipated. But as a participant in the Fourth Holy Grail War, Shirou is very sensitive to this. Could it be that he was discovered by someone else? Shirou wasn't sure what was happening, but he knew that Fuyaki City was becoming increasingly dangerous. Going on a trip wouldn't be enough, it would be best if they could move. But before making any plans, he needed to go to the tattoo shop and have the curse covered up. Arriving at the tattoo shop, the owner was very polite. After asking about the request, he carefully began to help Shirou deal with the curse on his hand. It was just that. What is this? The tattoo shop owner was perplexed. No matter what he tried, whether it was milk or a repair solution, the usual methods for repairing tattoos were useless against this tattoo. No matter what he did, the tattoo would appear again. Shirou was disappointed. As expected, ordinary methods were useless for this unscientific magical creation. I'm still too young. However, a significant issue has now arisen. As the curse cannot be physically covered up, anyone who sees it becomes aware of its unusual nature. It is only natural that this kind of abnormal, irreparable situation would draw attention, as no one could simply ignore it. Fortunately, before the situation could escalate, Shirou used suggestion to deceive the tattoo shop owner, his mother, Sakura, and the others. Even Sakura was not spared. Although Shirou has not formally studied magic, the heroic spirit Emiya Shirou was skilled in traditional magic. Therefore, young Shirou, who inherited Emiya Shirou's Saint Graph, has also naturally learned it. After using the suggestion, Shirou quickly put on gloves to prevent any incidents. When returning home, he used suggestion on Fujimaru and Sakura again, making them ignore the seals on his hand. When Shirou learned that his seal was known to others, he considered using suggestion to cover it up. However, too many people were already aware of it, and the news had spread too far for him to effectively contain it. In the end, it would be best to simply flee. Just as Shirou decided to stay at home until Fujimaru finished his work and then, under the guise of a trip, fled Fuyaki City with his family, Mr. Fujimaru hurriedly ran back home and urgently ordered Shirou and others, Shirou, and Sakura, put on your clothes. We're going out to eat tonight. Chapter 8. Mr. Fujimaru is a real estate salesman, a type of salaried worker that emerged during the boom of the real estate market following the Plaza Accord in 1985. However, after the real estate bubble burst in 1991, numerous real estate companies went bankrupt and this group of employees became the largest group of unemployed people. Fortunately, Mr. Fujimaru had developed strong emotional intelligence from his early experiences and worked extremely hard. The company president valued him and thus, he managed to keep his job despite the hardships. Due to Shirou's encounter with Urayu Unosuke, Mr. Fujimaru had already planned to resign and travel with Shirou to alleviate the shadow in his heart. However, he never expected that the company president would actually approve his leave, even with pay. All he had to do was complete one final, very important job. The client is a major player in Tokyo that wants to open a large mall in Fuyaki City's new downtown area. This is a highly sought-after opportunity for all real estate companies in Fuyaki City. Mr. Fujimaru has been working late every night for the past few days, barely coming home. The company's offer was not particularly competitive compared to its rivals, so the client had already made up their mind to work with someone else. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, they ultimately chose to work with Mr. Fujimaru. While there was no formal requirement, the client made a request to have a meal with Mr. Fujimaru and his family as a thank you. It turns out that the client's child was the girl who was attacked by Ryu Unosuke earlier. Shirou is quite helpless in this situation. Mr. Fujimaru's tone was very firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Due to his past experiences and years of struggle, Mr. Fujimaru generally takes a soft approach to handle situations and is often guided by his wife at home. However, at heart, Mr. Fujimaru is a traditional macho man, strong and decisive. Once he makes a decision, he sticks to it. Shirou had no objections to this plan. By helping Mr. Fujimaru complete the job, they could leave Fuyaki City more quickly. Leaving Fuyaki City, the sooner the better. Not only will his own situation as a participant become safer, but even Sakura, who was taken in by Mrs. Fujimaru, can temporarily escape the grasp of the Tosaka and Matou families and spend some happy time with their family. The banquet table was set at the International Grand Hotel in Shinto. Shirou didn't have the energy to see what it was called, because as soon as he heard the location, his heart was cold. He was afraid that a messenger of justice would run out from somewhere and blow up the hotel with a bomb. As for why he was so sure that the Grand Hotel that Emiya Kiritsugu blew up was this one, it was simply because in this small city of Fuyaki, this was the only hotel that was up to par and positioned as international. It's 1993 now, 1993. The war is at least 2 months away. Relax, the battlefield is still on the way, Shirou comforted himself. Mr. Fujimaru, this way, over here, a middle-aged man with short brown hair called out to them from a distance as they approached the Grand Hotel. Mr. Mitsuzuri, Mr. Fujimaru said as he led everyone over to him. Mr. Mitsuzuri led Mr. Fujimaru and his family into the Grand Hotel, expertly guiding them to a private room and taking a seat. There were already quite a few people in the private room, at least 7 or 8, including 2 elderly individuals. It was clear that it was not just Mr. Mitsuzuri's family. The girl who had been with Ryu Unosuke during their time of hardship was sitting next to an old grandmother. She had her head down, looking a bit downcast, with a forced smile on her face. It was clear that, as an ordinary little girl, she had not yet recovered from the trauma of a few days ago. Upon closer inspection, Shirou noticed that the little girl was actually quite cute. While her features were not as delicate as Sakura's, they were very distinct. Despite her young age, she had a classical beauty. The two main men introduced their families to each other. When Mr. Fujimaru introduced Shirou, Mr. Mitsuzuri quickly spoke up, saying, "So this brave little friend is called Shirou. I really have to thank little Shirou, otherwise, my family's Ayako would have been in danger." Mr. Mitsuzuri spoke with gratitude, without any of the condescension and arrogance that adults often have towards minors. He had learned everything from his daughter, and it was Shirou who had driven Ryu Unosuke away, allowing them to survive. Although his daughter's words were somewhat incomprehensible, such as how the wind suddenly picked up and Shirou was able to conjure a sword, Mr. Mitsuzuri assumed that his daughter was too terrified at the time and had imagined things. He believed that the actual situation was that Shirou had cleverly come up with a plan and used the tools around him to save himself. Otherwise, how could a child possibly defeat a murderer who could even kill adults? If something had happened to his daughter, Mr. Mitsuzuri couldn't forgive himself. It was his idea to come to Fuyaki City for business and even have his daughter transfer to Hachigata Elementary School in advance. If his daughter's life had been lost because of this, he would never be able to forgive himself. That is also why Mr. Mitsuzuri ultimately chose to give the job to Mr. Fujimaru, which can also be seen as a way of repaying the favor. "Uncle, you're overpraising me," Shirou shook his head and said casually. Mr. Mitsuzuri was a bit surprised. 6-year-old children are usually more timid, and even children with more outgoing personalities tend to feel awkward in the presence of many strangers. For example, Mr. Mitsuzuri's son was wild at home but couldn't speak in front of outsiders. But Shirou's speech was clear and his mood was stable, neither arrogant nor humble. Could it be said that he was worthy of being a child who could save himself in the face of death? "Ayako, get up and quickly thank brother Shirou." Shaking his head, Mr. Mitsuzuri said to his daughter. Ayako quickly stood up, looking at Shirou, and said, "Then, thank you, big brother." Shirou waved his hand dismissively and replied, "It's no problem. I'm just glad you're okay." Shirou didn't think that the girl he had shared adversity with would actually be his future classmate, Mitsuzuri Ayako. However, the current her is not as steady and reliable as she will be in the future, but rather timid and fearful like a typical young girl. Mitsuzuri Ayako felt a sense of longing. She couldn't forget how, during that life and death situation, she had panicked and cried continuously, while Shirou remained calm and eventually defeated the killer. Even now, during their conversation, he remained calm. "I want to be a reliable person like this brother in the future," Ayako thought to herself. The banquet continued, and the Mitsuzuri family expressed their deep gratitude to the Fujimaru family, most notably by constantly toasting Fujimaru Narita. Fujimaru Narita is no fool and quickly began to return the favor. The showdown at the dinner table was not about who had a higher tolerance for alcohol, but rather who could talk and who could get whom drunk. If someone has a high tolerance for alcohol but cannot speak, they will only be given more and more to drink, while others may praise them with their words but mock them in their hearts. Fujimaru Narita managed to hold his own thanks to his high emotional intelligence and ability to speak, while Mr. Mitsuzuri, an experienced businessman, only got slightly drunk after drinking with him. The other Mitsuzuri relatives who were trying to get them drunk ended up getting drunk themselves. As the drinking began to wind down, Mr. Mitsuzuri and Fujimaru Narita started talking about business and, in the process, shared their insights on the current economic situation. It's already tough to make money in a big city. There are more unemployed people than employed ones, and there's no money to be made. It's still better in a small city like this, where there's some profit to be made, Mr. Mitsuzuri said. Mr. Mitsuzuri is right. In a small city like this, the main economy is still based on small businesses. There are very few listed companies, so the impact is smaller. However, the user base is smaller and the market is easily saturated, Narita added. Then the competition is also smaller, Mr. Mitsuzuri agreed. The two men began chatting about business and eventually began discussing the contract they were about to sign. Shirou didn't care about these matters, he just focused on eating his food. After all, he was still young and not well versed in the economic situation in 1993. He only knew that the future would definitely be dominated by the internet, so he had no interest in listening to business talk. In addition, the Grail War, which was a matter of life and death, weighed heavily on his mind, so he had no desire to listen to business talk. Sister, is there anything strange on my face?" Sakura asked Mitsuzuri Ayako, looking worried. "Ah, no. It's just that you look familiar, like I've seen you somewhere before, Mitsuzuri Ayako replied, shaking her head. Sakura's body trembled, and she forced a smile, saying, it must be a mistake. I've never seen sister before. Maybe. Ayako wasn't sure. However, Sakura's bright green eyes reminded her of her classmate, Rin Tosaka. Shirou remained silent, recalling that Mitsuzuri Ayako and Rin Tosaka both attended Hachigata Elementary School and it was likely that Sakura had studied there as well. Fortunately, Mitsuzuri Ayako used to study in Tokyo with her father and had only recently transferred to Fuyaki City. Otherwise, she would have probably recognized Sakura at first glance. Sakura probably would have declined to join them if it wasn't for Fujimaru Narita urging his family of 4 to come along. However, before this outing, she had even accompanied him to a tattoo shop. Was this act of kindness from the girl or did she see him as a friend and consider him a brother? Shirou didn't want to think too much about it because he knew that Sakura was ultimately destined to leave. Although the Tosaka family had not yet come looking for her, it didn't mean they had given up on her. They were probably just preoccupied with the Holy Grail War. Alternatively, rather than using the Tosaka family's resources to search for Sakura, they might be aimlessly wandering the mountains, ignoring Fuyaki entirely. Shirou wasn't interested in finding out whether this was the answer or not. He just knew that the Tosaka family would inevitably come looking for them sooner or later. Once Sakura is taken back by the Tosaka family, she will be handed over to the Matou family and undergo modification. The only unknown factor is whether Shirou will be able to withstand the condemnation of his conscience and witness a once well-behaved and sociable girl being sent to hell. Shirou doesn't know. He is just an ordinary person, neither a noble saint nor an evil sinner, but simply someone trying to navigate the complexities of life. He has his likes and dislikes, experiences kindness and hatred, and feels courageous and fearful. He cannot remain indifferent to seeing a girl suffer in a miserable hell, but he is also unsure if he would be willing to risk his life to save a stranger who is not a family member or even a friend. These conflicting emotions are something that many people can relate to. Shirou is aware that he is hoping for that day to arrive later, constantly reminding himself, I want to stay alive. Don't take unnecessary risks and don't play with your own life. Being alive is the most important thing. If I can survive the Fourth Holy Grail War without any problems, I can go online, start a business, and become wealthy. He may continue to remind himself, but when the time comes, will he be able to remain indifferent and watch as a sociable girl is sent to hell? As a person with a conscience, it is uncertain how he will react. Only time will tell the answer to this question. Shirou thinks that this problem of evasion will not appear for a long time, at least not until after the family vacation is over. However, he did not expect that he would soon have to face this problem. On Friday, September 30, 1993, at around 3 p.m., 2 visitors arrived at Shirou's home. Hello, Mrs. Fujimaru. My name is Matou and this is Tosaka Aoi, Sakura's mother. It had been 15 days since Sakura joined the Fujimaru family and the Tosaka family had finally come to visit. Chapter 9, Chapter 9. The small living room, which used to be occupied by no more than 3 people plus Sakura, is now crowded with 6 people. The atmosphere is quite heavy. Shirou sits on the couch and studies the woman referred to as Tosaka Aoi. It is not surprising that she is Sakura's mother, as she is a very beautiful person. With long green hair and a white flowing skirt, she has a gentle demeanor and the poise of a lady. While Fujimaru's wife, who has grown up through hard work, has a unique energy characteristic of wild children, Tosaka Aoi exudes the calmness of a noble lady. It is easy to see how this elegant and graceful temperament would be very attractive to men. It is no wonder that Matou would become a lapdog and ultimately lose his life. Speaking of Matou, Shirou looked at the young man sitting next to Tosaka Aoi. With short black hair and neatly styled bangs, he appears to be slightly older, but is otherwise a normal and ordinary young man. Sensing Shirou's gaze, Matou turned his head and smiled at Shirou. I'm sorry, I'm late. At that moment, Fujimaru, his face showing signs of exhaustion, walked through the door. It was clear that he had worked overtime again. In fact, he had been busy with work for the past few days. He had finally negotiated with Mr. Mitsuzuri to purchase the property and was preparing to sleep at the company. However, he received a phone call from his wife that prompted him to rush back home. After all, Sakura's birth mother has come to visit and there is the intention to take her back. Most importantly, the mother has the surname Tosaka, which belongs to a noble family from the mountain town of Miyama. Although their influence in the Shinto area is limited, they are not a family that the Fujimaru couple can afford to offend. In this situation, as the head of the household, it is natural that he would be present. So, no matter how tired he was, he quickly returned home. Shirou, take the two sisters and go upstairs. Despite the tiredness on his face, Fujimaru quickly demonstrated his social intelligence and requested that the children leave before starting the conversation. Oh! Shirou stood up. With people from the Tosaka and Matou families present, he wanted to leave as soon as possible. Actually, when Shirou saw Matou Korea for the first time, his heart skipped a beat. Fortunately, he was wearing gloves in the room, which prevented the other person from seeing the seals on the back of his right hand. Rin, take Sakura and go to the second floor with this brother Shirou, Tosaka Aoi reminded her daughter. Oh! Rin, who was holding her younger sister Sakura, reluctantly replied and followed Shirou to the second floor, entering Sakura's room. Over the past half-month, the storage area had been transformed into a bedroom for Sakura. A princess bed, reserved at the furniture market, had been delivered and placed in the southeast corner, adorned with a pink mattress and a child's bedspread embroidered with cherry blossom balls. Mrs. Fujimaru had carefully selected warm-colored furniture, giving the room a girly feel. However, just as the room was being prepared for Sakura, the biological mother of the other party came to visit. But it's so small, Rin whispered as soon as she entered the room. Shirou's mouth twitched. Compared to yours, of course the room is small. Before he had a chance to ask the sisters to sit down, Rin pointed at Shirou's nose and said indignantly, "Who are you? I'm telling you, I'm not going to give away little Sakura, even if it means betting my dignity on it." Sister. Sakura grabbed Rin, a look of worry on her face. She didn't want Rin and Shirou to argue. Shirou spoke in a calm, even tone, "It's rude to point your finger at someone's nose. It's disrespectful to both the person you're pointing at and your own family." Rin quickly withdrew her hand. And to address someone with hey or who is also very impolite, Shirou continued. "My name is Fujimaru Shirou, not just Shirou or hey. Rin Tosaka didn't correct him this time, but instead she exploded, her words dripping with anger, "What do you care? I'll never let you have my sister." "Your words make it sound like Sakura is just a thing," Shirou replied calmly. "What a joke!" Rin exclaimed, her face contorted with outrage. "Sakura is not a thing. She's my sister." But then she faltered, her righteous indignation giving way to confusion. No, Sakura is a thing? No, Sakura is my sister, not a thing, woo. No. Shirou sat in the chair, his hands folded across his chest, watching with interest as Rin's face twisted in frustration. "Damn you!" Rin growled, her eyes narrowed at Shirou. "How dare you toy with the future head of the Tosaka family? Food can be eaten arbitrarily, but words must not be spoken arbitrarily. You are defaming a person's image. Think about it carefully, the words are spoken by you, the conclusion is drawn by you, and I have not said anything." Shirou spread out his palms and looked helpless as if he were an innocent victim. You. Rin was at a loss for words. Upon reflection, she realized that what Shirou said was true. Well, if it's all my fault, then you, the future head of the Tosaka family, can sit anywhere you like. My house is small, not as grand as your mansion, so don't be disgusted." Shirou replied with a hint of irony. The other person had already conceded defeat, he was acting like a loser and letting Rin find a place to sit. She should be gracious and show the demeanor of a future head of the Tosaka family. But, why did his perfunctory tone and his condescending attitude make her so angry? Hateful guy. Humph. Rin shook her head and tried to ignore Shirou, her face haughty and indifferent. But Shirou didn't get angry. An adult getting angry with a child would be too childish. He just found it amusing. "Sister, you should sit down. Standing is very tiring," Sakura said, sitting next to the dresser in a very ladylike manner. She patted the spot next to her, inviting Rin to sit. "Sakura." Rin looked at her sister with a sense of defeat. As her own sister, shouldn't she be standing up for her own sister? Why was she siding with that guy instead? So annoying. "Sister." Sakura's pure, green eyes looked at Rin with concern. "Come sit with me," Rin said, patting the spot next to her. She pointed an accusing finger at Shirou and asked, "Are you Fujimaru Shirou?" "Yes, what's the matter?" Shirou nodded. "I absolutely will not let you have Sakura," Rin declared, her gaze serious and determined. It was as if she was staring at her lifelong enemy. Shirou's mouth twitched, and he asked somewhat helplessly, "I say, how many times do you want to repeat this sentence?" "Repeat it 100 times, 1,000 times. Sakura is my sister, I will never give my sister to anyone else." Tosaka Rin said seriously. "I understand your sense of responsibility as a sister," Tosaka repeat, Shirou said, his tone perfunctory. "You're the Tosaka repeat machine. You. Rin, her face contorted with rage, struggled to come up with a proper insult. Suddenly, her gaze fell on Shirou's black gloves and she spat out, "You black-hearted kid." "Humph. Hateful." Tosaka Rin shook her head angrily. "This is truly textbook-level arrogance." Shirou had a headache. Chapter 10. In the living room. Now that the children have left, the adults can finally talk about serious matters. However, this matter is very troublesome. Mr. Fujimaru massaged his temples. He couldn't believe that the child his wife had picked up was actually from the Tosaka family. To make matters even more complicated, now the head of the Tosaka family and someone from the Matou family had come to request the child's return. The Tosaka and Matou families are well known in Fuyuki City, where they have long cultivated their influence in the old town nestled in the mountains. Although the power of these two families has waned in recent years with the rise of modern commerce, particularly in the newly developed city of Shinto, the Fujimaru couple, a pair of down-on-their-luck individuals, are no match for their might. Given the benefits and reality of the situation, it would be in the best interest of the Fujimaru couple to release the child immediately. However, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Tosaka, but I must speak frankly. I cannot in good conscience hand over Sakura to a mother who abandoned her in Shinto and showed no concern or interest in her for 15 days, Mrs. Fujimaru said gravely. Sure enough, she spoke. Mr. Fujimaru sighed inwardly, understanding his wife's character well. While she may not be particularly warm-hearted, she would never abandon a daughter she had accepted as her own. This was due to her own childhood experience of being abandoned by her poor parents in a bustling, but indifferent city. Determined to be an excellent mother, she vowed to never abandon her child, even if she struggled with expressing love and providing education due to a lack of role models. I did not abandon Sakura, Tosaka Aoi replied calmly, unfazed by Fujimaru's suspicions. As a mother, I always consider my child's well-being. I would never do anything that could harm her. In fact, I have been searching for her these past few days, believing she was in Miyama. I am very grateful to Mrs. Fujimaru for taking care of Sakura over the past half-month, but may I request her return now? Fujimaru was left speechless by Tosaka's sincere, heartfelt emotion. While Mrs. Fujimaru was hot-tempered and her feelings were genuine and strong, Tosaka was gentle and graceful, like water. The contrast between the two women was clear. I apologize, Mrs. Tosaka, for not returning Sakura to you right away after confirming that you are her birth mother. My wife has become deeply fond of Sakura over the past few months, going so far as to buy furniture and clothes that are suitable for her and even preparing to have Sakura's household registration transferred to our family. I hope you can understand the difficult position we find ourselves in. Mr. Fujimaru tried to calm down Mrs. Fujimaru before turning to Mrs. Tosaka and speaking. While Mr. Fujimaru has had similar experiences to Mrs. Fujimaru, he has also had the opportunity to interact with a variety of people in his work and has developed strong emotional intelligence and communication skills. These abilities have allowed him to handle difficult situations like this one more effectively. I am very grateful to you, Mr. Fujimaru, and I'm sure Sakura feels the same way. As for any economic losses you may have incurred, the Tosaka family is willing to compensate you. Mrs. Tosaka said. Mr. Fujimaru waved his hand and said, money isn't an issue. It's the emotional investment that's the problem. Mrs. Tosaka, can you tell me why Sakura ran away from home? This. Mrs. Tosaka hesitated. She wasn't sure how to answer the question. Should she mention that Sakura had heard that her father was planning to have her adopted by the Matou family? Why hasn't Mr. Tosaka come with you? Mr. Fujimaru asked. Well. Tosaka Aoi hesitated, not sure how to answer. Should she tell them that her Maga's husband was completely focused on the upcoming Holy Grail War and had no energy to spare for anything else? No. Even so, her husband, Sakura's father, had such strong paternal love that he had broken the rules of being a magus and spent a lot of energy lamenting his usually obedient daughter's rebellion while planning strategies. But how could she explain this to the Fujimaru couple, who were ordinary people? Despite appearing mild and polite in comparison to his fiery and loud-spoken wife, Mr. Fujimaru had proven himself to be a tough and perceptive man with his sharp question. Tosaka Aoi, with her good upbringing, couldn't bring herself to lie, but she also couldn't find a way to answer this question honestly. This is, Mr. Fujimaru, seeing Aoi's difficulty, Matou Korea, who was by her side, quickly intervened. Sakura's father is currently occupied with very important work, so he is unable to come at this time. Excuse me, Mr. Korea, what is your relationship with Mrs. Tosaka? Fujimaru asked. I am. Korea stumbled, flustered. Korea is my friend, Tosaka Aoi said firmly. Korea's eyes darkened and he awkwardly chuckled at Fujimaru. Yes, I am Aoi Nechan's friend. Friend? Fujimaru couldn't see it at all, but his common sense kept him from pointing this out. Mr. Fujimaru, I don't mean to threaten you, but legally, physically, and emotionally, Aoi Nechan is Sakura's guardian. You should understand this, right? Korea may not be skilled with words, but as someone who is not involved in magic, he understood the rules of the ordinary world better than magus. Yes, my wife and I understand. We respect the law and follow it, and we are not unreasonable people, Fujimaru nodded. Despite having difficult childhoods, the Fujimaru couple had grown up to be law-abiding and normal. If Sakura were just an ordinary abandoned child, the Fujimaru family would have no problem accepting her. However, Sakura has parents, and adoption is something that cannot be ignored by the law. In fact, from the moment Tosaka Aoi arrived, Fujimaru knew that it was inevitable that Sakura would be taken home. The challenge was in finding a way to handle the situation smoothly, without offending important people, and ensuring that his family wouldn't be left with psychological scars. Men, unlike boys, have people they must protect. Fujimaru, who was highly emotionally intelligent and mature in handling things, still found this matter tricky. Running away from home shows that there are conflicts between Sakura and Mrs. Tosaka. Let her choose. If Sakura still wants to stay here, it means that she has not let go of her resentment. Taking some time apart may help improve your relationship. Mrs. Tosaka, what do you think of this idea? Mr. Fujimaru proposed. Agreeing to let Sakura choose would be the most acceptable outcome, no matter what her decision might be. After considering it, Tosaka Aoi finally nodded in agreement. In the end, Sakura, under the disappointed gaze of Fujimaru, chose to go home with Tosaka Aoi. Of course, no matter how angry the reason was for choosing to run away from home, a 6-year-old child's biggest wish after being away from home for half a month is still to go home. But Chapter 11. Holding the hands of the two children, Tosaka Aoi sat in the back seat of a car, while Matou Korea sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. The night was enchanting. A red Honda Accord was driving on the national highway. It went from Shinto to Miyama. Korea, thank you very much for your help this time. When I heard about Sakura running away from home, you even rushed back from out of town to help me. Tosaka Aoi, holding the two children who were now asleep, thanked Korea, who was holding the steering wheel. Don't mention it, Aoi. I was also very worried when Sakura went missing. Korea tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Speaking of it, has that Tokyomi guy summoned his servant and participated in the Holy Grail War already? Korea changed the subject and asked. Tosaka Aoi pursed her lips. Korea, even though you've left the Magecraft world, you're still a member of the Matou family. I naturally know that, Aoi. Sorry, please don't mind this matter. Korea tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Speaking of which, what have you been doing lately? Aoi asked, stroking Sakura's hair. Well, I'm working at a light novel publishing company. Oh, by the way, Aoi, since Sakura has already been found, I'll be leaving in a couple of days. Some of the authors under my management have missed their deadlines for a week now, so I need to go chase them up. Is that so? Aoi hesitated for a long time, unable to voice the request in her heart. As a member of the Tosaka family, she knew she should clearly draw a line with the Matou family. Despite this, Korea, a member of the Matou family, had already helped her more than once. Aoi didn't want to take advantage of the situation by asking for another favor, especially now that Korea was busy with work. What is it, Aoi? Korea asked, growing anxious as Aoi remained silent for so long. He knew that he couldn't turn back now that he was on the highway, and the thought of causing a traffic accident or harming the woman he deeply loved filled him with dread. He knew that he would suffer for the rest of his life if anything happened to Aoi. It's nothing, Aoi said softly. By the way, Korea, is it hard working at the publishing company? Aoi's voice was always so gentle, Korea thought to himself. It's okay, I guess, Korea said with a sigh. It's just that these authors are so lazy. We have a plan in place that allows them to complete their work while still having free time to play, but they always end up rushing to finish their manuscripts at the end of the month because they're so lazy. Some of them even run away and don't turn in any manuscripts at all, so we editors have to go catch them personally. A few of them don't even write anything, and we have to hold a knife to their necks to force them. Korea unburdened himself, venting the frustrations of his work to Aoi. Oh, that must be really hard, Aoi said with a sympathetic smile. Korea felt his heart lighten and his energy return at Aoi's words. However, he still didn't hear the words he wanted to hear the most. She knew he would be leaving in a couple of days, but maybe that was for the best? Korea asked himself this in his heart as he wrestled with his feelings. He loved his childhood friend deeply, but couldn't bring himself to confess his love and was eventually left behind when Aoi married Tosaka Tokiomi. He would never be willing to bring the woman he loved deeply into the dirty, filthy Matou family. As long as I can see Aoi happy, that's enough, Korea repeatedly told himself in his heart. He knew that his own happiness was secondary as long as he could see the woman he loved happy and content. Wah! Mommy! Sakura woke up from a nightmare, looking at her mother Aoi with a pair of sleepy, pitiful eyes. Mommy, don't abandon Sakura. Aoi couldn't make a promise, knowing that she couldn't go against the wishes of her husband. She was torn between her duty as a Magus' wife and her duty as a mother. But Aoi had already made up her mind and made her decision before Sakura ran away from home. Despite this, she fully understood that her husband's values were different from those of ordinary people and she blindly loved him. She gently stroked Sakura's head, silently telling herself, everything is the best choice. She knew that her husband would never make a mistake, and she trusted him fully. As a Magus, her husband has magical abilities and their child has inherited those abilities. Sakura also has excellent potential for studying magic. In order to help their child reach their full potential and become an excellent Magus, this is the best choice. Even though it will be painful for a mother to let go, the bright future of the child makes it worth it. Everything is for the best. Tosaka Aoi's silence made Sakura uneasy, but Korea laughed and said, Sakura, how could your mother abandon you? Uncle Korea doesn't believe it for a second. Sleep well. When you wake up, you'll be home. Korea understands Tosaka Aoi's personality and knows that she is an excellent woman and will also be an excellent mother. He couldn't believe that Tosaka Aoi would abandon her child. At most, she might do something that the child doesn't understand, but that is ultimately very beneficial for them. It's like how normal mothers scold their children for not studying or doing their homework. Please help me take care of Sakura. These words stuck in her throat. Aoi knew that if she asked Korea for help, he would surely take care of Sakura. But she still couldn't bring herself to say those words to Korea. The Tosaka family and the Matou family are both magical families, allies in creating the Holy Grail War ritual, but at the same time, they are each other's greatest enemies. She is from the Tosaka family and Korea is from the Matou family. It's already troublesome for the other party to put down their work and travel back here to help find Sakura. How could she still ask for such a troublesome favor from him? That would be too shameless. The red Honda Accord drove all the way from Shinto to the Tosaka mansion in Miyama. Thank you, Korea. I really appreciate it this time, Tosaka Aoi said as she led the two children off the car. Ah, it's nothing, Aoi-ne-san. Here are the keys. I have to get back to the hotel. Korea handed the car keys back to Aoi and then left. Tosaka Aoi led the two children back to the mansion. Tokiomi is a classic Magus. Elegant, composed, and resolute. Tokiomi, due to his noble birth and early experiences, has a haughty personality and is extremely confident. He is a man with both pride and an unyielding character. As a Magus, Tokiomi has a strong sense of pride and self-esteem. He believes that, as a Magus, he must maintain the dignity of his profession and, because he is not bound by worldly restrictions, he must be more self-restrained. Despite his pride and self-restraint, there is one thing that sets him apart from other magi, his love for his children. Unlike many magi who only allow one of their children to inherit the family's magic crest and discriminate against children based on their magical aptitude, Tokiomi loves and cares for both of his daughters equally. However, perhaps because of this, heaven has given him both the greatest joy and the most painful punishment. Both of his daughters have excellent magical aptitude, but only one of them can inherit the family's magic crest and succeed him as head of the household. This is a choice that could have been made slowly, over time. However, as the head of the Tosaka family, Tokiomi must participate in the Holy Grail War in order to fulfill the wish of the Tosaka family and achieve the ultimate goal of being a magus. This is a war with a high likelihood of death. In order to prevent the extinction of the Tosaka family, he must choose an heir before he leaves to participate in the Holy Grail War. After much hesitation, Tokiomi ultimately chose his outgoing older daughter, Rin, to inherit the Tosaka family. However, this does not mean that he abandoned Sakura. Tokiomi loves both of his daughters equally and, even though he chose Rin as the heir, he did not give up on Sakura. He worked hard to ensure a bright future for her. Even as he prepared for the life and death battles of the Holy Grail War, he devoted a lot of energy to thinking about his daughter's future. Fortunately, his efforts paid off. The Matou family of Fuyuki City, who had a poor candidate for succession, were willing to adopt Sakura and raise her to be the head of the Matou family. Tokiomi was overjoyed at this outcome. What could make a father happier than seeing his daughter happy? However, Sakura's physical body was not suitable for the magic of the Matou family, so she needed to be modified. This was something that the head of the Matou family, an old man named Matazukan, had told Tokiomi beforehand. Despite this, Tokiomi was willing to accept it. Modification is always painful, but it was for the sake of his daughter's happiness. Compared to the happiness of being able to become an excellent magus like her sister in the future, the minor pains of childhood are worth it. Even if his daughter would be troubled and rebellious because of this, Tosaka Tokiomi believed that this was only because she was still too young and didn't understand the reasoning behind his actions. She didn't understand how important it was for him to sacrifice his own feelings for her future happiness. As a magician with a father's love, isn't it natural for him to want to give his daughter what he believes will bring her the most happiness? Even if it means causing her suffering in her childhood and causing himself the suffocating pain of separation from his daughter, it is all worth it for the sake of her future happiness. Even if his young daughter does not understand this at the moment, when she grows up and becomes more understanding, she will surely be grateful for her father's deep love and will thank him for his choice when she is happily able to become an excellent magician like her sister. But his daughter ran away from home. Even though he was busy with war planning, Tosaka Tokiomi couldn't help but spare a moment to sigh at his daughter's lack of understanding. However, considering her age, he didn't say anything. He wasn't worried about his daughter getting into accidents. Even though she is young, she is a magus's daughter and has self-defense item that Tosaka Tokiomi made specifically for her. It's just that his daughter's rebellion gives him a headache and needs to be properly addressed. Therefore, after sensing the item and confirming that his daughter is still alive, Tosaka Tokiomi chooses to focus on the life and death battle that is about to begin. Especially now that his daughter has been brought back home by his wife. Daddy! Sakura grabbed onto Tosaka Aoi's skirt and looked at Tosaka Tokiomi timidly. Go to sleep, Tosaka Tokiomi said affectionately as he stroked her head. The affectionate father is always lenient with his young and clueless daughter. Sakura was then taken away by Tosaka Aoi. Tokiomi returned to his desk, glancing over the information on the Holy Grail War participants that he had obtained and organized. Hwala hula. The Golden King, dressed in a casual white suit, sat on the sofa and poured red wine into a glass. He raised the glass slightly, his eyes like blood red sweeping over Tokiomi, Aoi, and the Tosaka children through the red wine. His handsome, distinctively featured face wore an elegant, joyful smile. What a delightful tragedy a group of hybrid blood will bring. The tears of a child pushed into the abyss by the love of a magus must be extremely delicious, and the despairing eyes falling into the abyss must be an exciting moment to witness. This script truly brings twice the joy to this king. The Golden King gently shook the wine glass, causing the red wine within to ripple slightly like blood. An inner joy smile graced his handsome face. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. Sakura has left. Her departure has left a sense of emptiness. Although it's not necessarily a devastating or heart-wrenching feeling, it's undeniable that something is missing now that they've lived together for half a month. It would be false to say that there are no feelings involved at all. However, because he had already prepared himself mentally, he can still bear it. In a few more days, the power of time will be enough to erase these psychological bumps. Besides, his own life is still hanging by a thread in the Holy Grail War. Where does he have the energy to think about other people's affairs? Is he so selfless? What a joke! Survival is the top priority for any living being. It's a natural instinct to prioritize one's own safety and well-being. It's just that, he can't sleep. Shirou, who had been unable to sleep, sat up in bed again, rubbing his tired eyes and scratching his head in frustration. The moonlight outside leaked through the thin curtain, scattering faint mercury-colored patterns on the bedding. Shirou, looking disheveled, realized that his inability to sleep was abnormal. The missing person-shaped pillow that Shirou had hugged for the past half-month was no longer on the bed, making it difficult for him to get comfortable no matter how he turned. The worst part was that whenever he did manage to fall asleep, he would dream of Sakura being dragged into an abyss by endless black worms, reaching out to him for help and calling out, "Brother! Brother!" In the bathroom, Shirou splashed cold water on his face and looked at himself in the mirror. He gave himself a slap to try and snap out of it. "Pa! Damn it! Wake up, Shirou! Fujimaru Shirou! You're not the original owner of this body, you're not a hero, you're just an ordinary person. She's not your whoever, don't think so much. Go to sleep." However, despite his efforts, Shirou was still unable to fall asleep. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, bathed in cool moonlight, Shirou couldn't help but feel frustrated with himself. Was it his body or his own inability to let go that was preventing him from sleeping? The most annoying part was that his mind kept bringing up all of the memories from the past. There is always an unforgettable memory in Shirou's heart. That was a day from his second grade in elementary school in his previous life. China wasn't as developed then and was in the era of a real economy, where foreigners were more important than officials. Shirou, who walked to school with the other boys in the morning, saw a crying baby in a garbage heap on the way to the vegetable market. When he passed by again in the evening, the baby was still there, but it wasn't crying anymore. If he remembered it because it was sad, that couldn't be the case. Shirou was not a saint, he was just an ordinary person. But if he had been indifferent, he wouldn't still remember it now. And now, he was facing a similar scene. He was in the same second grade of elementary school, with similar problems. The difference was that he was no longer the little boy he used to be, but a mature soul in society. And being mature meant abandoning all immature elements and looking at things rationally. But, please, don't let me think about these things anymore, I don't want to think about these. It's none of my business. It's none of my business. She's just a little girl I've known for half a month, I'm not her dad, her death has nothing to do with me. Shirou buried his head in the pillow and tried hard to fall asleep. But he still couldn't, no matter how hard he tried. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about the problems he had been trying to avoid. It's really this body's brain that has problems. Shirou blamed the brain of his body, reaching out to the side and trying to hug the pillow like he was used to, but only grasping at air. As he expected, the biggest problem was still his habits. In the morning, Shirou went downstairs for breakfast and Fujimaru-cho habitually made 3 breakfasts. Yesterday, after Mr. Fujimaru dealt with Sakura's matter, he returned to the company for overtime and had not returned yet. It was clear that the third breakfast on the table was meant for someone else. Shirou pretended not to notice and picked up the sandwich in front of him to eat. I don't know what kind of person Sakura's father is. He must have a really big heart. Despite his daughter being missing for half a month, he's still busy at work. Fujimaru Chiyo's remark made it difficult for Shirou to swallow his breakfast that day. Shirou, wait here and take care of the house, Mom is going to buy vegetables. I'll go too. Shirou stood up. Fujimaru-cho found it strange that Shirou, who had not left the house since the serial killer incident, now wanted to go out. Was it because Sakura had been taken away? She guessed right, that's exactly what happened. Staying alone can make you think blindly, but going out and taking a walk can clear your mind and help alleviate your troubles. It can also help restore adult rationality. Shirou thought to himself that, although he was not a bad person, he was definitely not a saint. To fight for a girl he had only known for half a month, only the protagonist of a juvenile fairy tale would do such a thing. In reality, no one else would. This troubled Shirou, mostly because of his naive brain and maybe his inherent kindness. At least, that's what Shirou thought. Otherwise, how could a person with a mature soul be like someone with a karmic obstacle? At most, they would sigh and feel guilty for a while, and then return to a normal life. Just relax, just relax. In 1993, the shopping markets of this era did not have the function of a vegetable market, so housewives had to go to the crowded and dirty vegetable markets to buy vegetables. However, it was not an obstacle for relaxation. It was just that. Looking at the blonde youth walking towards him, Shirou swallowed his saliva and unconsciously reached into his pocket with his right hand in the black leather gloves. My hand, could it really be a Siskin hand? Why am I so unlucky? Shirou mourned in his heart. The youth walking towards him had short, golden hair, a clear-cut face, and a handsome, classical appearance. He had a tall and slender figure, dressed in a white shirt and black casual pants, exuding a noble temperament. Gilgamesh. The first boss of the Fourth Holy Grail War. The most crucial thing is that this guy seems to have a future where he might be killed by the original Shirou. And does this guy have foresight? Don't see me. Don't see me. Shirou lowered his head, pretending to be an ordinary neighborhood boy, and leaned closer to his mother. Hey, what's wrong, Shirou? Fujimarucho asked in confusion. Shirou didn't explain, but only leaned closer, trying to pretend to be an ordinary neighborhood boy who was close to his mother, in order to avoid Gilgamesh's passing route. Having fused with the spiritual foundation of a servant, becoming a demi-servant who is a participant and stand-in, but not knowing whether he is a substitute or not, Shirou only hoped that he would not attract the attention of Gilgamesh, the embodiment of Mr. Gold. However, Gilgamesh's gaze almost immediately fell on Shirou. Surprise, shock, puzzlement, confusion, in an instant, many complex expressions passed through Gilgamesh's blood-red eyes, and finally, a very interested smile appeared on his face. The two passed each other. It seemed that he had not been discovered. Shirou breathed a sigh of relief. However, just as they were about to completely pass each other, Gilgamesh's arrogant voice sounded in Shirou's ear, a mongrel brat. No, a faker. In 3 days, that little girl will be sent to the abyss of worms. Fear, doubt, confusion, in an instant, many complex expressions passed through Shirou's eyes. But when he turned to look again, Gilgamesh had already walked away. Shirou, what are you doing? Let's go. Fujimarucho pulled on Shirou's arm, dismayed to find that she couldn't even move her son. This was too strange, right? He was just a 6-year-old brat. Ah. Oh. Shirou followed his mother into the vegetable market in a daze. His mind was full of doubts. Did Gilgamesh recognize his identity? And, did he recognize the spiritual foundation that he had fused with? It was understandable that he didn't do anything, because it was daytime now, and this hero king was also very arrogant. But why? Why did he tell me this? Obviously Chapter 13, Chapter 13. The Tosaka estate stands atop a high hill in the mountain town of Miyama, and in its underground lies the workshop of Tosaka Tokyo-mi. Inside the workshop is a device resembling a Y-shaped pendulum. Unlike traditional scientific equipment, the pendulum swing is adorned with magic jewels passed down in the Tosaka family, as well as ink soaked in jewels along the hanging rope. The stones and ink play the role of a fax machine. The stone paired with the jewels on this pendulum has already been given in advance to the spy prepared by the Tosaka family for the Holy Grail War. When this stone is placed in the pen holder and writing begins, the resonating jewel begins to shake and the ink drops precisely reproduce the writing on the rolling paper below, reflecting the text written in the distance. This is the operating principle of this device. Now the magical stone pendulum is resonating with the stone in London on the opposite side of the earth. The apparently irregular, back and forth motion reproduces the reporter's strokes correctly. Tokyo-mi, who discovered the spy report, picked up the paper and read the written text word for word. Every time I see this thing, it feels incredible. You'd think a fax machine would be more convenient. But with this, you don't need electricity or worry about breakdowns, and you don't have to worry about leaks at all. You don't need to rely on any new technology, we magicians have tools that are just as convenient and have been in use for a long time, Tosaka Tokyo-mi said. To Kaire, the fax machine that anyone can use is much more convenient, but the premise of this convenience, that anyone can use it, is certainly not within Tokyo-mi's consideration. In his view, it is natural for the aristocracy to have more technology and knowledge than the common people. Tokyo-mi, who still holds this ancient view in this era, is truly a classic magus through and through. The latest report from Clock Tower. The child prodigy Lord El Meloy has summoned a servant using a new holy relic and is on his way. It's not just that, Einsborn has also boarded the plane. It's just that the sudden appearance of Castor, who completed the 7 servants, caused the Holy Grail to activate nearly a year earlier than usual. This is not normal. It just means that the Holy Grail system has enough magical energy stored to start the ceremony, so the Holy Grail will gather the 7 people regardless of the time. The one who was brought in just to make up the numbers is just a small matter, nothing to be afraid of. Tokyomi is a uniquely optimistic individual and Kairi has been working closely with him for over 2 years. As such, Kairi has a deep understanding of Tokyomi's habits and tendencies. While Tokyomi is very careful and meticulous in planning, he can be careless during the execution phase, often leaving certain details entirely in Kairi's hands. Despite this, Kairi has become accustomed to this dynamic. Take care. Kairi, did anyone see you when you entered my house? Remember that we are still publicly seen as being in a hostile relationship. According to Tosaka Tokyomi's arrangements, they deliberately released the twisted facts. For nearly 2 years, Kairi was selected by the Holy Grail, but as per Tokyomi's wishes, he carefully kept the brand on his right hand hidden until this month. He publicly revealed that he had received the command spells and pretended to be a fellow competitor for the Holy Grail, breaking with Tokyomi. Please don't worry, there are no servants or magical devices that are monitoring this house, visible or invisible. This I can guarantee. As a third voice spoke, a black shadow appeared next to Kairi, revealing a twisted figure that seemed to appear and disappear. The tall, thin figure had previously accompanied Kairi in the form of a spirit, but now it had materialized in front of Tokyomi. This being, with magic that surpassed human understanding, was a servant. Dressed in a black robe and white skull mask, the strange man exuded an otherworldly presence. Yes, he is the servant known as Hassan of the 100 Faces, summoned earliest during the Fourth Holy Grail War. He made a contract with Kairi Kotomine and performed the duties of assassin. A little obstructive magic can't fool this servant assassin, Hassan, he said, assuring Tokyomi. There are no traces of being tracked or monitored around my master Kairi. Please rest assured. Hassan knew that Tokyomi was above Kairi in position, belonging to the position of ally master, so he respectfully reported while lowering his head. As soon as a servant summoned by the Holy Grail appears, my father, Risei Kotomine, will immediately find out exactly which class he belongs to, Kairi explained. Risei Kotomine, Kairi's father, currently serves as a special priest dispatched to the Fuiuki Church to oversee the Holy Grail War. He also has been given a magical device by the church called the Spirit Plate, which has the function of displaying the attributes of heroic spirits. The identity of the master can only be confirmed through their own investigation, but the number of summoned servants, their class, and other details can be obtained by the supervisor through the spiritual plate as long as they appear on the land. Fortunately, the supervisor has already formed a cooperative relationship with Tosaka Tokyomi and is acting in their favor as the referee. According to my father, there are already 5 servants in Fuiuki City at present, so Saber and Lancer, who have not yet appeared, will inevitably be in the hands of Einsborn and El Meloy. However, due to the war being advanced by 1 year, other magicians are still far from taking action. The only ones to worry about are the Matou family, as they are likely to be fully prepared like us. Additionally, since you plan to pass Sakura on to them, there is no guarantee that they will not use her as a hostage to threaten us. Matou has already entered into a magical contract with me, Tosaka Tokyomi explained elegantly. In exchange for my handing Sakura over to the Matou family, they will abandon their participation in the Holy Grail War and even agree to assist my family. So the Matou family is now your ally? Kairi asked. Tokyomi nodded. The current generation of inheritors in the Matou family are weaker than those of the past. I want to give Sakura to them to prevent the clock tower from sealing them off later on. Additionally, Matou wouldn't mind having a child with Sakura's excellent magical aptitude. That's why I made the request and he agreed. It's not surprising that you're the most prepared master, Kairi praised. Due to the changes at the start of the Holy Grail War, other masters haven't made any moves yet, but you've already fully prepared and even secured alliances with 3 servants on your side. It's a pleasant surprise that the Matou family will cooperate, even though this isn't much. However, this place is surrounded by other summoned familiars placed by other masters, so it's just a matter of time. Tokyomi revealed a smile. Kairi nodded and added, this place, along with the Matou residence and the Einsborn villa, has been determined to be the master's base. One of the advantages of the three great families against foreign magi is that they operate in the shadows. This gives them a significant edge in espionage wars, especially during the prelude to the Holy Grail War when they can utilize their home base. While Kairi has no doubt about Tokyomi's intelligence network, he must still be cautious of the unknown master who summoned Castor and forced the Holy Grail War to start a year earlier. If they encounter such an enemy, Kairi's assassin will be able to play a vital role. It's all right here. Assassin, continue to be on guard outside. Pay close attention, Kairi instructed. Understood. After receiving Kairi's instructions, Assassin once again blended into the void and disappeared from the room. As servants, it is within their power to freely switch between physical and spirit forms. Assassin, in particular, has a special ability that sets him apart from other servants, presence concealment. When he disappears, no one can track his movements. For Kairi, who summoned Assassin not to win but to support Tokyomi, the assassin is the best choice. Tokyomi and Kairi emerged from the basement and walked into the dimly lit living room, chatting about everyday matters. By the way, where did Gilgamesh go? Kairi asked. The reason why Tokyomi can face the Holy Grail War, which began a year early, with such grace and calm is because he holds the trump card of Gilgamesh in his hand. The king went to assess the public sentiment. Tokyomi hesitated, unable to bring himself to say taking a walk is a form of entertainment. As a self-proclaimed noble magus who respects power above all else, Tokyomi treats the hero king Gilgamesh, who is a servant, with the courtesy of a lord even though he is the master. In addition, he cannot understand why the noble Gilgamesh is so passionate about taking a walk. Since you're acting as a subject, Gilgamesh's voice took on an arrogant tone as his figure appeared beside Tokyomi, you dare to speak ill of this king behind my back? Tokyomi, your guts have grown a lot. Tokyomi immediately performed a noble etiquette, I dare not, your majesty. Ha, Gilgamesh chuckled, laying on the classical leather sofa with gold thread inlays. This king is in a good mood now, so I'll spare you of your guilt. Thank you, your majesty, Tokyomi breathed a sigh of relief. As the master, he did not want to be split up with his servant, but as a self-proclaimed noble, he also didn't want to offend the king unless necessary. Sitting on the sofa, Gilgamesh poured himself a glass of red wine and leaned back, gently swaying the wine glass as he watched the red liquid swirl within it. It is natural for the noble hero king to be obsessed with walking, as he is always difficult to understand, especially in a world full of mixed breeds. Even those who call themselves heroes, those who achieve kingship, or those foolish things celebrated as gods will never understand. The wise king, once praised by everyone, eventually becomes a tyrant in the epic. They will never understand his sadness, his helplessness, his anger, his expectation, his disappointment, his loneliness, and everything else, because the only person who could understand is no longer there. However, as an entertainment program, it has not yet come to an end. Chapter 14, Chapter 14. Shirou feels very sorry for Sakura, which is a sentiment shared by many people. This is why many Type Moon fan fiction writers believe it is necessary to save Sakura. However, when one actually comes to this world, crossing the dimensional barriers and entering the real world, it becomes difficult to continue this mission. As a real person living in the Type Moon world, he can experience real things, such as seeing people, touching objects, sleeping, eating, feeling pain, and even dying. This is a far cry from simply reading novels and mockingly viewing the high-dimensional protagonist as a carefree reader. If he is able to successfully navigate the Grail Wars and use his knowledge of the future to his advantage, he could become a wealthy, successful businessman in this world. He might even become a celebrity, frequently appearing in magazines and being a hot topic on the internet. Ultimately, he could marry a beautiful, normal young woman, or perhaps his wealth and success would lead him to have several mistresses. However, as a fan of Type Moon, one might wonder how it feels to have wives like Artoria and Scat Hatch, both of whom are national-level characters. Would it not be a waste of the opportunity to cross over into this world if one did not indulge in it? One might also assume that, as normal urban young people in the 21st century, they would be able to survive in a world where murderers lurk around every corner. However, upon realizing that they have indeed come to the Type Moon world, Shirou was pretty sure they would decide to be practical and focus on simply surviving the Fourth Holy Grail War before living a simple, wealthy life in this world. In order to do this, they must suppress their inner guilt, which stems from knowing about Sakura's tragic fate and not attempting to prevent it as a normal person would. However, the news from Gilgamesh has left Shirou feeling restless and distressed. Most importantly, his mother, Fujimura Cho, has taken a liking to Sakura. I don't know what kind of person Mr. Tosaka is, or why Sakura had to run away from home, Mrs. Fujimura mutters. She left so quickly. Even if she can't be my daughter, she can be my niece. The clothes I bought for her can also be taken away. Shirou is somewhat annoyed at this. Sakura. Sakura. Whether it's his own worries or the news from Gilgamesh, now that he's returned home and heard his mother's rambling, Shirou feels like the whole world is telling him to go save Sakura. Shirou's rational control falters in an instant, and he is unable to contain the flames of rebellion that rise up within him. It feels as though the entire world is pushing him to save Sakura, as if he will be tormented by regrets forever if he doesn't take this opportunity to risk everything. So then, he'll go and save her. That's right. It's not a matter of going against his own desires, of letting his rationality burn away, or of wanting to abandon his way of life. It's a question of being forced to act. And when he's being forced, he has no choice. Shirou shifts the blame, thinking that the desire beating in his heart is not his own wish, but rather the result of external forces. He shifts all of the guilt onto someone else, anyone who will take it. It doesn't matter who this someone else is, as long as there exists such a solipsistic existence. Because this can prove Shirou's rationality. With the resolution confirmed, Shirou begins to prepare his plan. To the hot-blooded youth, the idea of performing acts of kindness with the sole purpose of saving others without any thought of reward may seem admirable. But to Shirou, who possesses a mature soul, he knows all too well that such kindness given freely is ultimately a selfing act. He knows that such acts are ultimately futile, as they do not address the root causes of suffering and are unlikely to bring about lasting change. Purpose, method, and consequence, these 3 points must be rationally considered. According to the information Shirou obtained from Gilgamesh, Sakura will be sent to the Matou family by Tokyomi in 3 days. However, Shirou is not familiar with the mountain town of Miyama, so before then, he needs to understand the terrain. Fortunately, this is not difficult for him. After merging with the Saint Graph of Emiya, Shirou's memory has greatly increased. So after wandering around the mountain town of Miyama, he is able to remember the terrain and the location of the Matou family. After using suggestion to locate the hotel where Matou Korea was staying under police surveillance, he also obtained the internal structure of the Matou family by using the demi-servant's caster class suggestion on them before they left, creating a map of the family's structure. On the second night, Shirou used suggestion on his parents and then left home to visit the Matou family. I must be insane to risk my life to save a girl I barely know, who I've only been acquainted with for a couple of weeks, Shirou cursed himself for his irrational behavior. October 2, 1993, Saturday, 22:52. As planned, Shirou arrived at the previously selected area near the Matou family mansion at the appointed time, his gaze fixed on the gates of the mansion. Although Gilgamesh had told Shirou about Sakura, he had not provided any specific details, only saying that it would happen within 3 days. This led Shirou to suspect that Gilgamesh may be a real tax evader. Since relying on chance is not Shirou's style, he began setting up an ambush in the early morning of the 3rd day. At this moment, Shirou looks like a professional assassin, dressed in a black bodysuit, tight pants, black gloves, and a black cloak. In order to avoid being seen, he has covered himself as much as possible. In Shirou's eyes, however, this is only a basic level of concealment. Shirou even went to the hair salon beforehand to dye his distinctive red-brown short hair black. As he was doing this, he couldn't help but think that he looked like Gudeo in FGO, with similar features except for the different eye color. However, this was just an illusion. In order to further avoid being recognized, Shirou also wore a pair of blue-colored contact lenses. This is what he considers to be a mid-level form of concealment. The craziest thing is that he even wore a set of Ultraman 7's leather suits bought from a children's shopping center. He deliberately bought a larger size and wore shoes that increased his height by 7 centimeters. This is completely crazy. With these 3 layers of concealment, it is difficult for Shirou to be recognized based on his height, body shape, hair color, eye color, and other physical characteristics. This level of caution might be expected of someone who is very determined to stay alive. However, if this were to be spread out, it would probably make people speechless for half a day. At least Mr. Gold, the well-intentioned citizen who provided the information, is speechless at the moment. He has never seen someone dressed like this to commit robbery. Chapter 15, C15. As he grumbled about Gilgamesh's unreliability, Shirou carefully positioned himself in ambush, his entire focus trained on the Matou residence. October 3, 1993, Sunday, around 3 p.m. A black Honda Accord approached slowly from a distance, and an old man with a cane emerged from the gates of the Matou mansion. As soon as Shirou saw this old man with a cane, he fixated all of his attention on him. Before setting up his ambush, Shirou used concealment in an attempt to minimize his presence as much as possible. In theory, there should be no possibility of being discovered, but Shirou was not sure how effective it actually was in practice. Since the information about Sakura came from Gilgamesh, it is likely that he knew that Shirou was lying in ambush nearby. However, since Gilgamesh was willing to provide the information to Shirou, it seems that he does not plan to interfere with Shirou's actions, right? No. According to the type moon setting, Gilgamesh has a unique set of values that is different from that of ordinary people, making it difficult to understand his actions using an ordinary person's mindset. However, Shirou was unable to come up with any corresponding countermeasures. All he could do was do his best and leave the rest to fate. Shirou's gaze was fixed on the black Honda Accord, and using the clairvoyance inherited from his Saint Graph, he was able to almost immediately see the situation inside the car. It appeared that Rin Tosaka was not present, and Sakura and her mother were sitting in the back seat while Tokiomi Tosaka sat in the front passenger seat. The driver was a young man with distinctive blue hair and a face that resembled a grown-up version of Shinji Matou. It was likely that he was the current head of the Matou household, Matou Byakuya. And in fact, Shirou had not guessed wrong. That man was indeed Matou Byakuya. The car arrived at the Matou mansion, and Matou Byakuya asked the three members of the Tosaka family to get out of the car. He then stood behind Matazukin and appeared to be completely allowing him to do as he pleased. "It's been a long time, Tosaka family head," Matazukin said with a creepy smile. "It's been a long time, the old head of the Matou family," Tokiomi replied with a graceful smile. "Is that Sakura? The imaginary numbers is truly a good seed. Unlike the offspring of our Matou family, whose talents have withered, we have no choice but to request the succession of a child from the Tosaka family head," Matazukin sighed, appearing troubled by the lack of competitiveness of the Matou family offspring. But this might also be the root of the Tosaka family head's worries. Two excellent offspring, but the Tosaka family's Magic Crest can only shelter one, and the other has a very high possibility of being sealed by the Clock Tower's bigwigs with a sealing designation, right? After all, it is such an excellent talent. And being sealed with a sealing designation as though being protected feels like being pickled in formaldehyde, he he he. Matazukin let out a creepy laugh. "This is indeed my worry, Matou family head," Tokiomi replied calmly and gracefully. "Then, I ask again as the head of the Tosaka family. Will you, the Matou family, truly nurture my daughter, Tosaka Sakura, as the successor?" "This is of course," Matazukin laughed, "without an excellent successor, the Matou family will only continuously weaken and eventually disappear in the river of history. This is the reason we came here to request it. The Matou family will naturally nurture this child as the successor. It's just that the Matou family's magic attribute is water, so the Matou family needs to make some changes to this child's magic attribute. Of course, since it is being nurtured as a successor, there will be some pain during this change, but it will definitely be beneficial for her. And for the sake of this child's life and future, the Tosaka family head believes that you will be able to accept it. May I ask, what kind of changes will be made?" Tosaka Aoi asked Matazukin as she gently patted the head of crying Sakura. Matazukin remained silent and turned to Tokiomi, inviting him to speak on the matter. "Aoi!" Tokiomi scolded. Aoi hesitated for a moment before ultimately remaining silent. "I apologize, my wife was just worried." "I'm sorry, Matou family head," said Tokiomi, bowing apologetically. No, it's okay. Lady Aoi is not from a Magus family, so she doesn't understand our customs. As an old man, I can understand that," Matazukin said with a laugh. Tokiomi nodded gratefully. Among Magus, it was an unspoken rule that if an outsider tried to learn their secrets, it was considered a declaration of mutual extermination. This was the way of the Magus. Tokiomi looked at Aoi, who knew it was time. She moistened her lips and patted Sakura's shoulder, saying, "Sakura, go." "Liar," Sakura said, standing in place, tears streaming down her face. In a soft and gentle voice, she continued, "Mom is a liar." Aoi's body shook and her heart ached at her daughter's words. Tokiomi turned to Sakura and crouched down in front of her, saying, "Sakura, I've made a decision. You are no longer a member of the Tosaka family. Instead, you will join the Matou family and be known as Matou Sakura from now on." Cruel, heartless. A father speaking such cruel words to his children. In an instant, Sakura felt a suffocating pain. Her own parents had abandoned her. Tokiomi felt a pang of pain as he saw the hurt in his daughter's eyes. However, he knew that his decision was necessary for her future and that the pain he was causing her was insignificant in comparison. Both of Tokiomi's daughters were exceptionally talented, but the Tosaka family only had one magic crest, which could only protect one of them. If the other daughter displayed her magical aptitude, she would likely be targeted by the clock tower and subjected to the sealing designation, which was a cruel form of imprisonment for talented magi or those who had violated certain taboos. These individuals were confined and treated like specimens in a jar of formalin for the rest of their lives, which was considered worse than death by many magi who saw magic as their life's work. Tokiomi couldn't even begin to imagine the excruciating pain of such torture, and he didn't want his daughter to have to endure it. Both Rin, with her 5-element magic attribute, and Sakura, with her imaginary attribute, would be targeted by the clock tower. However, the Tosaka family's magic crest could only protect one of them, so he had to make a difficult decision. Tokiomi loved both of his daughters equally, but he knew that he might not return from the battlefield. Therefore, when considering the future of his family and the succession of the Magic Crest, he believed that Rin, with her outgoing personality and strong will, was the best choice. It was a difficult decision, but one he had to make. Therefore, he chose Rin and abandoned Sakura. No. It couldn't be called abandonment. Tokiomi had already set Sakura on a path toward developing her magic abilities. He had done what he could to provide for her future and ensure her success as a magus. Initially, Tokiomi considered sending Sakura to the Edelfelt family in Finland, who were bitter enemies but also related to them through kin. However, the Edelfelt family already had an heir, and the relationship between the two families had always been strained due to some problems. While sending Sakura there would protect her, it was likely that her life would be difficult and challenging. That was when the head of the Matou family approached Tokiomi and offered to adopt Sakura, promising to treat her as an heir and cultivate her magic abilities, as well as cooperate in the Fourth Holy Grail War. Tokiomi couldn't resist the temptation, and he believed that Sakura's life would be better with the Matou family, who were willing to invest in her future as an heir, rather than with a family that had a long-standing grudge against them. Most importantly, being adopted by the Matou family would allow Sakura to inherit their magic, which would be incredibly beneficial for her future as a magus. For these reasons, Tokiomi was happy to agree to the adoption. "You are no longer a member of the Tosaka family. Go, Matou Sakura," Tokiomi said to his child in a heartless and cruel tone that was difficult for him as a father to utter. Sakura's tears flowed endlessly as she took hesitant steps toward Matazukin. "He, good child, Grandpa will definitely take good care of you. He. Matazukin let out a creepy laugh. Tokiomi didn't think much of it and, after sending Sakura off, he and Aoi left in the car. "Dad, Mom." Sakura's words faltered and tears flowed like a river. She knew that from this moment on, her world no longer had a father and mother. "Come inside," Matazukin said, walking into the Matou courtyard. Matou Byakuya also took Sakura's hand and led her into the mansion. Sakura walked into the gloomy Matou mansion with hesitant steps, her body trembling with fear at the foreboding atmosphere. At this moment, Sakura remembered everything from her life at the Tosaka household, her Western-style room, the stuffed dolls on her bed, the loving sister, a gentle mother, and a strict yet kind father. All of it was gone now. She passed through the large iron gate that closed behind her, saying goodbye to that warm world. "Let's take her inside first." He. Matazukin let out a delighted laugh, which, combined with the gloomy atmosphere of the Matou household, was unsettling. Matou Byakuya, who obediently followed orders, was even more rough and unsympathetic, lacking any sense of consideration or warmth. In contrast to these new relatives, Sakura couldn't help but think of the place where she had lived for half a month. The aunt Sakura lives with is very kind and enthusiastic. She is different from Sakura's gentle and quiet mother, but she is energetic and shows her love for Sakura in a way that can sometimes come across as scolding. Despite this, she works hard to maintain the family and takes good care of Sakura, who left home and was feeling lost. It's clear that the aunt cares deeply for Sakura and wants the best for her. The uncle is also very kind. He is different from Sakura's elegant and steady father, but he is a busy man who follows his wife's lead at home and seems to lack masculinity at times. However, he is full of love for his family and is very reliable in critical moments, supporting the family like a pillar. He takes extra care of Sakura, who suddenly joined the family and has no history with them, and is always there to help her. The older brother is also very kind. He is different from Sakura's strong and extroverted sister, appearing cheerful but actually seeming melancholy and conflicted about something. Despite this, he immediately accepted Sakura into the family and showed her care and concern. Every night when he is half asleep, he holds Sakura a little worriedly, but it is not annoying. It seems that the older brother cares deeply for Sakura and wants to protect her. It's just that all of it. The moment when her father told her that her name was Matou Sakura. All of it was no longer related to her. What is her future in this gloomy Matou family? Chapter 16, C16. The iron gates of the Matou family swung shut with a loud bang, but Shirou didn't immediately take action. He waited for a moment before moving. As a demi-servant, Shirou's senses had been heightened by merging with the Saint Graph, allowing him to detect the presence of other servants. Fortunately, he sensed none within the Matou family. However, he couldn't be certain if the servant had been summoned elsewhere or if there was another reason for their absence. Regardless, Shirou knew it was best to be cautious. Thanks to the information he obtained from Korea using suggestion, Shirou knew that the walls of the Matou family's property only enclosed half of their land. The rest was protected by various magical defenses. The small grove of trees connected to the Matou family's back garden was not enclosed by walls but rather guarded by various magical defenses. The grove was challenging for an ordinary magus to pass through, but Shirou had an advantage. Thanks to the information he obtained from Korea and his enhanced physical abilities as a demi-servant from merging with the Saint Graph, he had learned the mansion's layout and could navigate through the grove with ease. Fizz. Damn. It looks like it won't be so easy to sneak in anymore. Some of the layout have been changed, Shirou thought with a hint of resignation as he looked at the tree leaves that brushed against his forehead. As the sorcery ignited, a winged insect flew up and attacked Shirou the next moment. Trace on. Shirou's 27 magical circuits rapidly activated, supporting the power brought by the spiritual foundation. He waved his hand and used projection, instantly projecting a sword that pierced the brain of the winged insect with a sharp shush. But wish wish wish. The rustling of the leaves sounded like a deafening gale tearing through the trees, whipping the branches into a frenzy. In the next moment, a swarm of insects emerged from the underbrush, their wings whirring as they rose up like a black curtain, blotting out the sun. The air buzzed with their frenetic energy, and the ground seemed to vibrate beneath their tiny feet. Buzz buzz buzz. Shirou had been exposed, and he knew he had to act fast. With a determined expression, he gritted his teeth and projected two long swords. He swung them wildly in front of him, using the E-rank physical strength of a servant to form a sword net that seemed impenetrable, slaying the incoming insects. With the same fierce determination, he charged ahead like a bull and broke into the Matou residence. Heh, which foolish soul has dared to disregard the magical rules and enter this old man's residence in broad daylight? Matou cackled, leaning on his cane as he walked out. As Shirou looked at the old man up close, he realized that Matou was an unusual and strange-looking person. Zukin was bald, with limbs as thin as a mummy's, deep-set eyes shining with a fierce light. He was hunched over and short, dressed in a dark blue and deep grey yukata and holding a wooden cane. From a distance of about 10 meters, Shirou could clearly smell the foul stench of corruption emanating from him. "Tell me, who are you?" Matou asked with a sinister smile, and behind him was a sea of insects resembling a black tide. It appeared that Matou hadn't noticed Shirou's servant aura due to him being a demi-servant with a physical body. However, Shirou paid no attention to Matou's question. Despite his frail appearance, Zukin was a genuine great magus, and in his prime, he was said to be a match for a servant. Shirou, as an inexperienced person, knew better than to underestimate this old man who had lived for centuries. In response to the old man's question, Shirou saw it as the perfect opportunity to launch a sneak attack. After all, an opportunity arises from the carelessness of one's enemies. With a swift wave of his hand, he summoned 3 long swords through projection and launched them towards Zukin with a swift shush. Heh. Projection. Such a basic magecraft is useless against this old man, Matou chuckled, remaining still as the sea of insects surrounding him engulfed Shirou's swords like a tidal wave. Despite this, Shirou appeared unfazed and continued to project swords to attack his opponent, seemingly oblivious to the ineffectiveness of his attempts. Futile effort. Matou's chuckled, but his voice sounded very strange. Buzz buzz buzz. The swarm of insects around Matou's acted like an army with a will of its own, effortlessly engulfing and consuming every sword that Shirou launched towards him. Relying on such meager means to invade my mansion? You're a fool to even try, Zukin declared, his eyes flashing with killing intent. The sea of insects around him acted as his left and right arms, surging and rolling towards Shirou with deadly force. Ignoring Matou's provocation, Shirou instead saw it as an opportunity to exploit his enemy's weaknesses. As a servant with the weakest level of power and no combat experience, and hailing from a civilized society governed by laws, Shirou knew that winning against a powerful opponent like Matou's required a calm and calculated mind, rather than succumbing to anger and provocation. He understood that his best chance of success lay in seizing upon any openings in his enemy's defense and exploiting them to his advantage. Shirou couldn't understand why Matou's would make the mistake of using provocation during a fight with his enemy. Perhaps age had made him more talkative, or maybe provocation was a part of his combat strategy, along with his magical research and family background. However, Shirou knew better than to make such a low-level mistake himself. He was not qualified to indulge in such luxuries. With his full attention devoted to the battle, Shirou remained intently focused on the task at hand. He understood that this was a necessary precondition for victory, especially as a novice with limited combat experience. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A swarm of insects swirled like a raging sea, trying to engulf Shirou. And at that moment, Shirou's eyes shone. Despite merging with the Saint Graph and inheriting all the abilities of the heroic spirit, Shirou's young body was unable to handle the sheer amount of knowledge he had acquired. The existence of legendary blades, in particular, proved to be overwhelming for him. Shirou knew that if he were to forcibly use projection, it would only result in his magic circuits reaching their limit, causing him to lose his combat power prematurely. He had to be strategic and selective in the blades he chose to project, making every strike count. As an inexperienced bird with no understanding of combat and the weakest attribute, Shirou could only project ordinary swords. Facing a great magus who had lived for centuries, victory seemed impossible. However, a mature mind and prior preparation can create a door to victory. Now, the key to unlocking that door was firmly in Shirou's grasp. Its name is Chapter 17, C17. Shirou whispered the name to himself and ignited the magic hidden within the swords. Crack! Gradually, the swords, projected from Shirou's being, shattered within the sea of bugs. Then, with a resounding boom, an explosion akin to thunder rent the air, with sparks blossoming like summer fireworks in the sky. Foolish, 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 Matou's called out as he stood in the midst of a sea of bugs that protected him from the explosion and flames. How could something like this hurt this old man? Although the 17 swords projected by the explosive Magecraft were like the centers of fireworks, their flames and explosions did little to harm Zukin. However, the intense flash of the explosion was another matter. It was challenging for anyone to keep their eyes open, but for Matou's, who had lived for centuries and had a body that had reached its limits, causing him to become highly sensitive to light, the flash was especially dazzling. When this light fades, Zukin thought, I will definitely kill you. As the intense light subsided, Zukin looked around, expecting to find his attacker taking advantage of the situation. However, to his surprise, there was no one there. The field was completely empty. Zukin wondered, did he run away? What was the point of releasing such a strong light if he wasn't going to use it to attack me? Despite feeling confused, Zukin reminded himself that the entire Matou family was under his control. He knew that if the person who had caused the explosion was still in the family, the bugs spread throughout the mansion would reveal his location. There was no way for him to escape. Shirou knew that the key to victory was not brute strength, but achieving his goal. He wasn't fighting Matou's to see if he could use the strength of the servant to defeat him. So he used the most disgraceful tactics in modern warfare. The intense light and noise created by the explosion of 17 projected swords briefly blind and deafen Matou's, causing him to lose his sense of balance and direction. As a result, Matou's, whose vision and hearing was sealed by broken phantasm, could only use Magecraft to explore and locate his position. P.S. Broken phantasm: if a noble phantasm is packed with magical energy, it can be made to explode after striking its target. It is nearly impossible to repair a destroyed noble phantasm, and since they are the trump cards of heroic spirits, they are unlikely to take such measures. Emiya is an exception, as he can reproduce as many copies of noble phantasms as his magical energy will allow due to tracing, allowing him to also counterbalance the fact that all of his projections are lowered by 1 rank. Therefore, Shirou used his own Magecraft to create dozens of swords filled with as much magical energy as he could currently muster and scattered them around. Using these dozens of swords as a net to confuse Zukin, he rushed into the Matou mansion like an arrow. If Emiya Kuritsugu was a magician killer specialized in modern weapons, then Shirou was a demi-servant who applied modern warfare concepts to battle. The only concern was whether Matou had a means of detecting him directly, without relying on vision. Shirou didn't know the mysteries of Magi, which he couldn't understand. All he could do was do his best. Breaking into the Matou mansion, Shirou rushed around, opening doors and searching for Sakura's whereabouts, but he found nothing. However, he did find the young Matou Shinji in a room. Shirou projected a sharp sword and held it to Matou Shinji's neck, threatening him in a dangerous tone. "Tell me, where is the girl who was adopted by the Matou family? Don't kill me, don't kill me, sob sob sob. Dad, Dad." Matou Shinji, who was only 6 years old, was extremely frightened and tears streamed down his face. Shinji had originally been wondering what gift he should give to the girl who would start living with him and become his younger sister, showing his older brother's dignity, but the next moment someone broke into the room and held a knife to his neck. "Tell me quickly." Shirou urged impatiently, the sword in his hand approaching Matou Shinji's skin. He had no time to waste with Shinji, as the old worm was likely to pursue him at any moment. Feeling the cold of the sword on his neck, Matou Shinji was extremely frightened and cried out, I don't know, sob 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 sob, Dad. Dad." Shirou was getting anxious, and at that moment, a high-pitched cry sounded out. "Don't come! Don't come!" Sakura's voice. Shirou left Shinji behind and ran toward the source of the sound. As he ran, he heard the sound of chaotic footsteps and a moment later, the panicked face of Matou Byakuya appeared before him, rushing towards Shinji's room. Although Byakuya was a useless man, he naturally came to his young son's aid upon hearing his cries. However, upon seeing Shirou, Byakuya's face showed confusion. "What are you?" he started to say, but the word had not yet left his mouth when Shirou punched him in the stomach. Shirou's attention was immediately drawn to the desperate cry that echoed through the halls, and he disregarded Byakuya as he sprinted toward the source. The entrance to the staircase loomed before him, a dark and foreboding maw that exuded a corrupt, damp smell and was alive with the sound of writhing, crawling things. Shirou's eyes narrowed as he realized that Tokiomi had only just left and Matou had already begun to make his move. Clenching his fists in anger, he merged with his Saint Graph, his speed increasing as he charged toward the source of the disturbance with even greater urgency. "It hurts. It hurts so much." Feeling the black, wriggling, strange creatures with their sharp, knife-like mandibles piercing her skin and trying to burrow into her, Sakura was extremely frightened. Tears streamed down her face as she cried out and frantically tried to pull the worms out and throw them far away. But it was no use. There were too many of these strange creatures in this place, too many. After experiencing the betrayal of her own parents, the young girl had been thrown into a hellish lair of worms. The man who was supposed to be her father had locked her up in this place at the behest of the old man who was supposed to be her grandfather. As he listened to her cries, the man couldn't help but laugh at her struggles. The more she cried out, the harder he laughed, enjoying her misery. Tears streamed down her face as she cried, her sobs racking her body. She tried to cry out for her parents, Mom and Dad, but then she remembered, you are no longer a child of the Tosaka family. She had been abandoned by her family. Her strict yet loving father, her gentle mother, and even her sister who had always loved her were all gone from her world. So, is there anyone? Is there anyone who can come and save me? She cried and cried out in despair, waiting and hoping for a hero to arrive and rescue her. But all she could hear besides her own cries were nothing. The real world does not bend to her expectations or hopes, and those who place their faith in the false promises of illusion will inevitably be betrayed by their own delusions. Those who ignore the harsh realities of life will ultimately be defeated by it. So, give me your hand. In the pitch black, damp underground worm room, a familiar but urgent voice echoed through the darkness. Swish, swish. The wormhole churned like a turbulent sea, trying to swallow everything in its path. But a sharp sword cut through the air, unleashing a brilliant display of fireworks with broken phantasm, lighting up the indescribable darkness of the abyss. Light has come. A shadowy figure, swathed in a billowing black cloak, appeared on the stairs, reaching out towards her with a beckoning hand. The voice that called to her was familiar, filled with a sense of urgency and concern. What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and give me your hand. You foolish, little sister. Chapter 18, C18. She cried and prayed for a hero that reality would never allow to appear, but he finally arrived. However, unlike the gentle, invincible heroes in fairy tales, his voice was urgent and his demeanor was rough. But it was not wrong, this was the voice of her older brother. He was the hero who had come to save her. Sakura stretched out her hand. Shirou reached out and grabbed hold of it, pulling her towards him. Worrying. The turbulent wormhole surged, trying to swallow and deprive Shirou, who had taken their food. Shirou projected a sword and fired it directly at the creatures, causing it to shatter in the air. The explosion's brief flash of light caused these strange creatures, who had lived in the dark and damp, to instinctively retreat. Seizing the opportunity, Shirou picked up Sakura and fled. Sakura was still quietly sobbing, and at this time she needed gentle comfort. But Shirou had no time for that. In such a dangerous situation, wasting any time would be irresponsible for each other's lives. Rushing out of the Matou mansion, before they had even left the garden, the familiar stench of corruption filled their nostrils. The next moment, the gloomy and murderous voice of Matou's sounded from behind them. So that's it, that's it. Your target is Matou's granddaughter. Leave Matou's granddaughter behind. Boom. As Shirou ran down the path, a column of water surged up from the ground, swirling with a horde of black insects that rushed towards him like blades. Shirou quickly pivoted on his heel, dodging the attack like a leopard, but this brief pause in his run allowed Zukin, who was enraged, to catch up to him. To think you'd dare to take my granddaughter away, go to hell. An endless horde of black insects emerged from the surrounding forest, pond, and flowers, crawling towards Shirou. Even more worms emerged from the Matou mansion, gathering to form a massive, 10-meter-tall black giant. Go! The black giant formed of insects reached out towards Shirou with its hand. The hand, made up of countless writhing insects, was enough to trigger a severe fear of trypophobia in anyone who saw it. Shirou, a normal person, couldn't help but feel fear at the sight of it. But even in the face of fear, he knew he couldn't back down. He knew that the only way to overcome fear was to confront it head-on. With determination in his eyes, Shirou raised his finger and began to project a sword. This sword, he knew, was capable of killing the insect giant that loomed before him. The sword that Shirou projected was no ordinary weapon. It was a sword that could only be wielded by a hero, a holy sword. It was not a sword that a mortal like Shirou should have been able to wield. But heroic spirit Emiya Shirou was most familiar with this sword. As Shirou summoned the weapon, his body was racked with a searing, fiery sensation as his 27 magic circuits sprang to life, their energy coursing through his veins like molten lava. But these immature, undeveloped circuits were not yet strong enough to harness such power, and they cried out in protest as they struggled to keep up with the demands placed upon them. Shirou could feel them cracking and straining under the strain, threatening to shatter like fragile glass at any moment. Azure lines appeared densely on his right arm and extended to half his face, glowing with an otherworldly light. In his mind, he shouted, "Come forth!" The invincible golden sword, Caliban. This sword, known also as the Sword in the Stone, was one that Shirou had copied from the same person who had wielded Excalibur, a sword that was beyond his ability to trace with his own magical energy. The immature magic circuits within Shirou's body were overloaded as he summoned the sword, causing his right arm to shake and bleed from the strain of containing all the magic power that was tumbling inside him. This was the price that a mortal like Shirou had to pay in order to attain a heroic feat. But finally, the sword that symbolized the achievements of the King of Knights materialized in his hand, glowing with a fierce and fiery light. With a mighty cry, Shirou launched the sword forward, sending it hurtling through the air like a starlight arrow. Whoosh! It struck the insect giant with a mighty impact, boom! Completely destroying its upper body and continuing on with the remaining momentum, hurtling towards Matou's with deadly intent. The surging magic power that flowed through the blade was a force to be reckoned with, and it seemed that nothing could stand in its way. Matou's looked at Shirou in disbelief, stuttering, This is a noble phantasm. Are you a servant? But why? Why don't you have the presence of a servant? But before Zukin could even finish speaking, he was cut down by Shirou's projected caliban, the magic-infused blade slicing through him with ease. The swarm of insects that had surrounded them scattered on the ground, writhing and thrashing as if they had lost their master. Shirou collapsed to the ground, his right arm throbbing with pain and the right half of his body burning with heat. He propped himself up on his left hand and sweat beaded on his forehead as he struggled to catch his breath. Although his right arm was throbbing with pain, he could still feel it, so he knew that it had not been wasted. It seemed that his heroic feat, achieved through sheer force of will, had only caused his right arm's magic circuits to become overloaded, rather than causing any permanent damage to his hand. Sakura's tears fell like pear blossoms as she looked at Shirou. "Big brother." "It's okay," Shirou said through gritted teeth, trying to ignore the burning pain he was feeling. "Let's go." He stood up, pulling Sakura's hand out of the Matou mansion. But just as they thought they had escaped, a malicious voice, more malicious than before, sounded behind them. "Don't think it's over yet. My dear granddaughter, my eternal life, I will never give up." The sea of insects churned and a uniquely shaped insect emerged from the horde. That was the true form of Matouzukin. "To deal with servants, we can only use servants. Byakuya, bring that mad dog here." Zukin commanded. Matou Byakuya, who had just emerged from the mansion, held his stomach and twisted his face in pain. Despite his discomfort, he obeyed Zukin and raised his right arm, upon which was a red mark similar to the one on Shirou's right hand, the command seals. "By the command seals, berserker, come quickly to my side." As the seals took effect, the next moment, a blue-white-skinned blonde man with bulging muscles appeared in the Matou mansion. "Oh oppressor, oh abuser, your loyal partner, Spartacus, is already standing in front of you. Don't be afraid anymore, don't be afraid anymore, because, I am here." Berserker Spartacus's face was full of love. Listening to these nauseating lines, Matou Byakuya's mouth twitched and his face turned black. And to directly say his real name, he really deserved to be called a mad dog. "Oh oppressor, oh abuser. I will avenge you." Spartacus picked up a small iron sword and pointed the tip at Matouzukin, launching an attack. "Damn it, mad dog!" Matouzukin cursed and used the sea of insects to bind Spartacus's legs, then barked an order, "Byakuya, quickly use the seals." Mara Byakuya nodded, "By the command of the seals, berserker, go and kill that person." He pointed at Shirou. The seals on his right arm diminished by another mark, fulfilling its function as intended. "No. No 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 no. That person is the oppressed, that person is the victim. That person is someone I am supposed to protect. No 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 no. I will never oppress the victim, I will never attack the oppressed. No 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 no. Don't do this, don't do this." No matter how much he resisted, the powerful force of the seals was forcing Spartacus to do something completely against his will. The muscular, blonde hulk of a man had tears streaming down his face as he held the sword, shaking as he launched an attack. That was someone he was supposed to protect, the reason for his existence, yet because of the seals, he was forced to attack the very meaning of his own existence. "No." With tears streaming down his face, Spartacus charged at Shirou, his sword held high. The weapon seemed to weigh as much as a mountain as he swung it down toward Shirou, easily catching up to him. Without hesitation, Shirou pushed Sakura out of harm's way and summoned a sturdy sword, using it to block Spartacus's attack with a horizontal strike of his own. He used his left arm to deliver the blow, the muscles straining with the effort. Kika. Spartacus's strength was so great that when they made contact, the sword in Shirou's hand was easily cut in two, and his left arm, which had been used to block the attack, seemed to be broken as well. "Ah ah ah!" A sickening crunch filled the air and a painful scream tore from Shirou's lips. It was clear that the impact had broken bones. Intense pain shot through Shirou's arms and into his brain, causing him to experience unbearable agony and tears to flow naturally from his eyes. Spartacus let out a cry of agony as he shook his head, repeatedly saying, "No. No 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 no." He struggled with the question of why this was happening, feeling conflicted as he wielded his sword against the weak. "Why does it have to be like this?" he asked, his voice filled with despair. "I should be the sword of the weak, the shield of the weak. Why am I attacking them like an oppressor?" His internal turmoil was palpable as he struggled with the weight of his actions. The lack of physical injuries was inconsequential to Spartacus, as the pain he was experiencing was far greater than any wound a sword could inflict. This behavior, whatever it was was causing him immense turmoil and agony. It was as if his very being was being torn apart from the inside out, causing him more pain than he had ever known. Spartacus yelled at his body, "Don't move anymore. My soul is commanding you to stop. Can't you feel it? The person you're trying to protect is being oppressed by your actions." Despite Spartacus's cries and yells, the seals held a powerful grip on him, rendering his beliefs and values meaningless in the face of its overwhelming force. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to break free from its grasp, causing him to feel helpless and despairing. Spartacus raised his long sword. "It's over." Shirou's face was covered in a cold sweat as he tried to process the situation. Despite being a demi-servant, he was still just a 6-year-old child, vastly inferior to the mythological killers in front of him in terms of attributes, combat skills, and even killing experience. "It's all over." Shirou had resigned himself to his fate. Suddenly, an arrogant and commanding voice spoke in Shirou's ear, "Lower your head." Without thinking, Shirou obeyed the command and lowered his head. In the next instant, a bright sword shot through the air and impaled Spartacus, pinning him to a nearby pillar. In the chaos of the moment, Shirou was unable to think about who their mysterious savior might be. All he could think about was getting out of there as quickly as possible. He leaned on Sakura and whispered urgently, "Hurry and leave." Sakura didn't have time to feel afraid. She was too focused on the fact that her brother had been badly injured because of her. How could she keep wallowing in her own sorrowful world? Sakura grabbed onto Shirou and half-dragged him away from the mansion. Matou was furious when he saw what was happening. "Who is it? Who is ruining the old man's plans?" In response to him was a giant sword that could split mountains. Boom! The Matou house was destroyed and Spartacus was unable to get up, pinned down by the giant sword. Despite the dire circumstances, there was no anger in Spartacus's eyes, only joy and relief. "Thank goodness! Finally, I don't have to oppress the weak anymore." Chapter 19, C19. Shirou and Sakura made their way along the escape route that had been carefully planned in advance. "Big brother, your hand." Sakura's tears were flowing freely and she couldn't hide her worry. "Let's not talk about that now. We'll talk about it when we get home," Shirou replied, shaking his head. They were still in the Matou family's sphere of influence and he didn't want to risk attracting attention by discussing his injury. He was focused on getting them both to safety and didn't want to waste energy worrying about other things. Shirou couldn't help but wonder about the sword that had appeared earlier, wondering if it had been the helpful Mr. Gold who had taken action. It seemed strange to him that the self-centered king who pursued pleasure would extend a helping hand to him. He couldn't shake the feeling that there must be some other reason behind the king's actions. Shirou shook his head and decided not to dwell on these thoughts. He knew that Mr. Gold had his own unique values and it would be crazy to judge his actions based on normal logic or the values of ordinary people. It was best to leave it at that and not try to understand the motivations of someone who was so far outside the norm. As long as the outcome was good, that was enough. Although, he had lost 2 arms. No. It wasn't accurate to say that he had lost them. His right hand was paralyzed due to an overloaded magic circuit, while his left hand was fractured and suffering from muscle spasms due to blocking Spartacus's attack. Despite the severe pain in both of his arms, Shirou knew that this meant that he still had sensation and that his arms weren't lost. However, after this battle, Shirou realized that even though he had merged with his Saint Graph and become a demi-servant, he still had a chance against magicians, but going up against proper servants would be suicide. If it weren't for Mr. Gold's intervention, even if he had indirectly managed to weaken Spartacus's attack, he still would have been crushed. The only way to survive the Fourth Holy Grail War is to leave, Shirou decided. He knew that once they left Fuyaki City, he would have to use suggestion to make his family go out and play for a year, in order to keep them safe from the troubles of 1994. Shirou knew that he would have to sacrifice his father's job in order to keep himself and his family safe. He knew that even in the midst of an economic recession, there would be job opportunities, but there was only one life and it was more important to protect that. It was a difficult decision, but one that Shirou was willing to make in order to ensure their safety. Shirou and Sakura were making their way out of the small grove of trees outside the Matou residence when, out of nowhere, a sea of flames appeared in front of them, blocking their way. "There seems to be a problem at the Matou residence. Could you please put the young lady down, Magus?" A voice asked from within the flames. It was Tokyomi, who emerged from the inferno like a gentleman. Tokyomi had already left the Matou residence when he heard the explosion and received a warning from Gilgamesh, who was nearby. He immediately turned around and drove back, arriving just in time to meet Shirou and Sakura as they were trying to escape. Aoi stood next to the car, looking at Sakura with concern written all over her face. "This won't do," Shirou said as he stepped in front of Sakura, trying to protect her. He deliberately lowered his voice, knowing that it was the only part of him that wasn't disguised. He had done his best to change his appearance, but there were no voice changers available at the department store. "It's not befitting of a magus to kidnap a young lady while hiding in the shadows," Tosaka said, feeling strange about the situation. He knew that he wasn't dead yet, Sakura was still young and should be under the protection of the Tosaka family, so the clock tower shouldn't have placed a sealing designation on her. This led him to the conclusion that the person in front of him was a stray who had come out of nowhere. "That's better than a father who abandons his children," Shirou replied, intentionally leading Tosaka to misunderstand his true identity. "That is not up to you to say," Tosaka Tokiomi replied, carrying the elegance of a noble to the end. "If you don't want to make an enemy of the Tosaka family, please return my daughter to me." "Liar." Before Shirou could speak, Sakura muttered under her breath. "Sakura." Tokiomi was momentarily startled. "You're all liars!" Sakura exclaimed, mustering up the courage to speak out. She raised her head and looked at Tosaka and Aoi, tears streaming down her face. "You're not my dad, and she's not my mom. You're all liars. My dad and mom are already gone." Tosaka was momentarily stunned by Sakura's words, but he quickly recovered his neutral, elegant demeanor. "Sakura. It is normal for you not to understand now, but all of this is love from your parents. You will be happy in the future because of our choices." "Happy? Love?" Sakura couldn't comprehend how Tosaka could speak of happiness and love in the face of the fear, terror, and despair that she had experienced in the basement. The man and woman who had willingly sent her to that hell were no longer the loving parents of her memories. Tears flowed freely from her eyes as she struggled to come to terms with the betrayal. "I don't have a father. I don't have a mother. I am not a child of the Tosaka family." Tokiomi and Aoi stood frozen in shock, as if they had been struck by lightning. The once weak and clever, obedient and sensible child eventually returned these words to her parents who had abandoned her. In the end, it was the parents who were abandoned by their children. Betrayers will eventually be betrayed, mutually inflicting suffering and torment upon each other. It's truly a delightful play. Perched atop a distant tree, the king surveyed the land with a satisfied gaze, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth as his eyes sparkled with pleasure. "It's a shame, Tokiomi of the Tosaka family. There's no sign of your daughter here. You can either leave or let me send you on your way." Shirou projected a long sword using his still functional left arm and pointed it at Tokiomi. Tokiomi, whose noble manners were deeply ingrained, quickly regained his composure. He looked calmly at Shirou and said, "The child is still young and doesn't understand, but if you dare to kidnap my daughter, then you are an enemy of the Tosaka." Tokiomi swung his staff and summoned a tidal wave of flames with his surging magical energy. However, before he could unleash them, Shirou had already launched his attack. He hurled the long sword in his hand and activated Broken Phantasm, causing the blade to explode with a blinding burst of light that was too intense for the human eye to withstand. Tokiomi reflexively closed his eyes in response. When he opened them again, the only thing he could see were the shoes growing larger and larger in his field of vision. Thud! The sound of the impact echoed through the air. Shirou stepped on Tokiomi's face and used the momentum to escape the sea of flames. Tokiomi was filled with shame and anger. "Damn it!" he cursed. Even the manners of a noble were difficult to maintain in the face of such an embarrassing action. No. Perhaps it was because he was a noble, but the dignity within him couldn't bear such shame. But Shirou and Sakura had already run far away, and Tokiomi didn't have the courage to use heavy force against them. Instead, he stirred up a wave of heat and used the wind to reveal Shirou's true appearance, planning to settle the score at a later time. Rattle rattle! As the cloak was thrown off, Shirou's true appearance was revealed as it should have been. However, what Tokiomi saw was the legendary giant from the Land of Light, the leather suit of Ultraman 7. Tokiomi was confused. Shirou's all-around concealment had an effect. He ignored Tokiomi's confusion and ran away with Sakura. Passing by Aoi, Shirou didn't even look at her. Only Sakura looked at her, at that woman, at the woman called Mother, tears blinding her eyes. Aoi froze, completely frozen. The already painful heart of a mother became even more painful at that moment. Of particular importance was the fact that Aoi saw the blood and wounds on Sakura's body. Those wounds were not inflicted by a blade. What happened? What exactly happened in such a short moment? Aoi doesn't know. She can only wonder what happened to her daughter. Her heart breaks even more at the thought. Tokiomi wanted to chase after Shirou and Sakura, but at that moment, the distant voice of Matou Byakuya, filled with anger and shame, called out to him. Damn it! Tosaka Tokiomi, even if you don't want to continue the family succession, what do you mean by letting your servant sneak attack us, the Matou family? Byakuya questioned, his voice filled with anger. The swarm of insects driven by Zukin followed behind him. However, upon seeing Tokiomi, Byakuya realized something and his heart skipped a beat. He quickly ordered the insects to burrow underground and hide. But it was too late, Tokiomi had already seen everything. As a magus, he understood. He understood. He was more aware of why Sakura would be so angry. The Matou family's magic has actually degenerated into insect magic. Tokiomi exclaimed, filled with shame and anger. The shoe print on his face had not yet disappeared, and his eyes were full of rage. Give me an explanation, Tosaka Tokiomi. Matou Byakuya angrily questioned. You are the ones who need to give me an explanation. Tokiomi said, his anger palpable. If I had known that your Matou family's crest had become such an ugly, inferior, stinking form of insect magic, I would have sent Sakura to Finland long ago. You. Byakuya was extremely angry. He acted as the puppet head of the Matou family because he could recklessly enjoy the family's wealth, but Gilgamesh's attack had nearly killed him, and he couldn't bear it. The deal had been mutually beneficial, but now he was filled with anger. Spartacus, kill him! Byakuya shouted. Oh, it's the oppressor. Even though he was still under the strong effect of the command seal, Spartacus was much happier this time. He charged toward Tokiomi with cheerful laughter, a blooming smile on his face. However, before he even reached halfway, 4 large shields descended from the sky, trapping him like a cage and halting his progress. Mongrel, this is how a mongrel should look, said an arrogant voice. Everyone looked up to see Gilgamesh standing atop a tree, looking down on all beings with arrogant eyes. Your Majesty, allow them to experience the punishment of the King of Heroes, Tokiomi shouted, his voice filled with guilt for his deceived daughter and anger at being deceived. Despite his emotional state, he still maintained the etiquette of a noble. This noble demeanor had become so deeply ingrained in him that it had penetrated his bones and entered his soul. However, in response to Tokiomi's request, Gilgamesh merely chuckled haughtily and turned away, completely ignoring him. Tokiomi's hands shook with anger as he thought about using all of his seals to kill the Matou family and then letting the haughty king commit suicide. But he suppressed these thoughts, knowing that he needed to fulfill the long-held wish of the Tosaka family and his own desire to reach Akasha. With the king having already left, Tokiomi knew he couldn't face berserker Spartacus alone. He grabbed Aoi and fled in the car, leaving behind only Matou Byakuya, filled with anger and frustration, and Spartacus, still trapped within the shield. Find it! We must find it! That is this old man's, my eternal life! Matou Zukin erupted in anger. Gilgamesh stands atop the tallest tower in Fuyuki city, gazing out at the land below. The cold moonlight bathes his angelic face. Fervor, contemplation, emotions that should not be present in the all-powerful king of heroes, yet they burn brightly in his blood-red eyes. That soul! That mottled soul filled with debris emanating such a revolting stench. There is no doubt that it is nothing but a mongrel soul. But the fire that burns within it is fierce. The fire of a mongrel, burning fiercely. Burning with a light that has never been seen before. And behind that light, there is a possibility, however small, that it is something he once strived for. From wise king to tyrant. From happily sharing everything with the people to selfishly hoarding everything for himself. There lies the thing he initially sought. Just a possibility, a minuscule probability smaller than grains of sand, but it is enough. As long as there is a possibility, it is enough. The entertainment of punishing thieving scum has come to an end. However, that mottled soul, in its small and fragile body, is too weak to withstand my glory. Eyes slightly narrowed, Gilgamesh wears a pleased smile. Chapter 20, C20. Wearing an Ultraman leather suit, Shirou pulled Sakura's hand and rushed towards the direction of Fuyuki City. This was the Fuyuki Bridge connecting Fuyuki City to Miyama. The pedestrians on the road couldn't help but turn their heads and look at Shirou's Ultraman outfit with curiosity. At this time, the otaku culture had not yet emerged, and cosplay was still a new thing. Shirou ignored these gazes and, after successive battles, his 6-year-old body was unable to bear the burden, leaving him mentally exhausted and without the energy to care about the gaze of the crowd. At this time, Sakura stopped walking. "What's wrong, Sakura?" Shirou turned to look at her. Sakura squatted down, her hands covering her pretty face, tears flowing down her palms. "What should I do, what should I do? She must be afraid and also very painful, right?" Shirou couldn't sit idly by and do nothing. A 5-year-old girl should be enjoying her childhood, receiving her parents' love, but instead she was ultimately abandoned by her parents and indirectly pushed into that hellish nest. She must be very afraid. Shirou paused and hugged her, speaking softly and soothingly, "Don't be afraid, I'm here. Brother is here." Sakura also hugged him back, hot tears rolling down her face and onto Shirou's shoulder. "What should I do? What should I do, brother? Daddy, Mommy, they don't want me anymore. No one wants me anymore. No one will not want you. After all, Sakura is so cute and well behaved. And even if everyone else doesn't want Sakura, brother will always, always protect Sakura." Shirou spoke softly. "Really?" Sakura stopped crying and looked at Shirou with teary eyes. "Let's make a promise." Shirou held out his right little finger. Sakura hooked her left pinky onto it. "We'll hang by a hook for 100 years, and if we break this promise, we'll have to swallow 1,000 needles." As they spoke, they pressed their 2 big thumbs together. The promise was established. Seeing that Sakura was no longer crying and looked somewhat relieved, Shirou stood up and smiled, "Let's go home." "But do I still have a home?" "Of course you do. Aunt Jo and Uncle Narita are all waiting for you. Won't they hate me?" "Of course not. They love you very much." Shirou brought Sakura home. Of course, he couldn't just go home like this, so he first jumped to the 2nd floor, entered through the window, took off his Ultraman costume and hid it under the bed, then put on a long shirt to cover his injured arm, and then jumped back to the 1st floor and entered through the front door. "This child, you didn't even say a word before going out and only came back so late. Where did you go?" Mrs. Fujimaru scolded Shirou with a worried expression, twisting his ear with one hand. "I went to see Sakura," Shirou said dejectedly. His suggestion had only lasted one night and was now useless. If he had known, he would have made it last longer. "Sakura?" "Yes. Sakura will continue to live with us." The Tosaka family agreed. "Is that so? That's great." Mrs. Fujimaru's eyes lit up as she looked at Sakura behind Shirou. "Erm. Aunt Jo, hello. I'm sorry to bother you from now on." Sakura hesitated a little, but still greeted her politely. "It's no bother at all." Mrs. Fujimaru hugged Sakura and smiled, "Stay with Aunt Jo for as long as you want." Mrs. Fujimaru accepted Sakura warmly. Although Mr. Fujimaru had some concerns about the Tosaka family, when he heard that the Tosaka family had agreed, he didn't think much about it. "You two, come in and eat. I made tempura today," Mrs. Fujimaru said. As usual, your cooking is inedible." Shirou took a taste and gave a true evaluation. A tick mark appeared on Mrs. Fujimaru's forehead, and then with a thud, she smacked the newspaper she had rolled onto the table. "Is it good?" Mrs. Fujimaru smiled kindly. Shirou sneered, did he look like the kind of person who would be threatened by violence? What a joke! "Good, good. It's no wonder you're my mother, the beautiful warrior known as the saint of the kitchen." Shirou put on a flattering smile. Mrs. Fujimaru turned to Sakura and asked, "Sakura, is it good?" "It's delicious. Aunt Jo, if you have time, please teach me." Sakura put down her chopsticks and said earnestly. "Of course." Mrs. Fujimaru smiled brightly. The night was peaceful. Everyone was happy. After dinner, Mr. Fujimaru announced that his work was coming to an end and he could sign the contract in a few days. He then announced that they were going on a family trip. Shirou was the first to clap and cheer at this news. Not only would they be able to go out and have fun, but they would also be able to avoid the Fourth Holy Grail War. And when they were out, they wouldn't have to worry about the Matou or Tosaka families coming to demand their children back. It was a win-win situation. Exhausted from the day's events, Shirou retired to bed after dinner. He had a relaxing bath and slipped into a comfortable Doraemon pajama before climbing into bed. Just as he was settling in, Sakura appeared at the door. "What's wrong, Sakura?" Shirou had to climb out of his bed again and look at her. The third room on the second floor had already been emptied and decorated in a very girly way. It was assigned to Sakura. But now, Sakura was standing at the door of Shirou's room. I'm scared." Sakura's legs shook, and she hesitated to ask, "Brother, can I sleep with you?" The child must have been scared by today's events. Shirou nodded and said, "Of course." He welcomed Sakura. Sakura laughed and then climbed into Shirou's bed. She lay on her side, looking at Shirou with a pair of eyes similar to Rin's deep green. "Brother." "What?" Shirou asked. Sakura didn't answer, but opened her arms and hugged Shirou's waist, then pressed her face against Shirou's chest. "Well, it's really the cycle of heaven and earth, and now he must face the retribution." Previously, he used Sakura as a pillow, but now Sakura was using him as a pillow. Shirou shook his head and didn't say anything, but pressed the light on the bedside table. "Good night." "Good night, brother." The pillow is back. Even if he pushed the blame on the ideal, he still saved Sakura in reality and completed his own adventure. The problem that had been avoided was solved, and Mr. Fujimura's work was also coming to an end, ready to leave Fuyuki City and escape the Fourth Holy Grail War. In this way, the crisis of life was also lifted, and tonight will surely be a good dream. However, the dream was pitch black, and a seductive blood moon hung in the sky. There was an almost tangible black mist around him, and the faint sound of ghostly whispers could be heard. The ground was a bizarre field of ominous flowers. In front of Shirou stood a purple-haired girl, holding a pair of spears and smiling at him like an older sister next door. "So that's how it is," she said. "A special being like this. No wonder." "Nice to meet you," she continued. "I am the mistress of this kingdom. My name is Skathatch. You can also call me Skathik Sensei."
Thanks for listening.